All right, good afternoon, folks. It is now 12:03 p.m. and we have a packed agenda, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I am Councilman John Bullock, Chair of the Education, Youth, and Older Adults Committee. Appreciate you being here today. Also joined by Vice Chair of the committee, Councilman Mark Parker of the 1st District. Also joined by member of the committee, Odette Ramos, council member for the 14th District. Also joined by Councilmember Jermaine Jones of the 12th District, member of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Along with Councilmember Paris Gray of the 8th District. We also obviously have our committee staff, Julianne Jamont, and we are also graciously joined by our council vice president and member of the committee, Councilmember Sharon Green Middleton of the 6th District. So as I mentioned today, we have a very packed agenda. We're going to do our best to get through it. Again, we'll start with City Council Bill LO 250014. Well, that's where we're going to discuss Baltimore City Children Youth Fund. We'll also have LO 250040, First Step Strong Start Early Learning in Baltimore City, and have a voting session for Bill 250100, Children Youth Fund updates. We will go ahead and begin with LO 250014, Baltimore City Children Youth Fund. And this is again for the purpose of holding a committee hearing to give updates on the status and activities associated with the fund. I will say this is a yearly exercise that we do, and we appreciate those updates. So at this point, we'll get started with reports from our agencies, and we'll start with Alicia Lee, President and CEO of the Baltimore Children Youth Fund. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to the City Council and all of our colleagues and community partners that are joining us. I'm Alicia Lee, the President and CEO of the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund. I'm joined today by several board members of the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund and staff as well. And we thank you for the opportunity to share about BCYF's vision and impact over the last year. BCYF begins with the simple but powerful truth that this fund exists because Baltimore voters created it. BCYF is not a private initiative or a temporary program. It's a public commitment from over 80% of our city that was established by a referendum to ensure that Baltimore's young people and the organizations and leaders that serve them have stable and protected support. This is the foundation of our work. Your vote, your fund, your youth, BCYF exists because Baltimore's voters chose this stable, protected funding opportunity for Baltimore's young people, and that's exactly what BCYF is here to deliver. We are guided by our vision for a more just, abundant, and creative Baltimore, and we remain committed to removing barriers, elevating grassroots leadership, and ensuring that young people and communities help shape the resources of BCYF and the ways that they are invested. Today, we'll walk through BCYF's work in 3 acts, looking at justice, creativity, and abundance. And across each act, we want to make 4 things very clear: that BCYF is grounded in a voter mandate and a clear public purpose, that BCYF is accountable and public by design, that BCYF strengthens neighborhood organizations, both through funding and professional learning, and that when these programs and organizations have more stability, young people in Baltimore are better positioned to thrive. BCYF reflects Baltimore's decision to invest in young people in a way that is stable, intentional, and protected. And our vision is a just, abundant, and creative Baltimore where youth have access to opportunity, to mentorship, and the support that they need to be thriving citizens. To advance that vision, BCYF uses a dual investment strategy. 75% of our grant-making dollars are direct grant funds, and 25% are for professional learning. This model recognizes that if we want strong outcomes for young people, we need strong neighborhood organizations that deliver these opportunities. BCYF's grant-making pathways are designed to meet different needs across the city while staying anchored in the same public purpose of strengthening youth opportunity through community-rooted investment. And the impact of that investment continues to grow. Since 2020, BCYF has awarded more than $40 million in direct grant funds and currently supports more than 100 youth-serving organizations across Baltimore. More than 80% of our grants are multi-year grants, helping organizations to stabilize their staffing, improve planning, and deepen their service to young people over time. These organizations are largely Black and Brown-led, grassroots-driven, and directly providing more than 17,000 Baltimore youth seats of opportunity. That public investment has been accompanied by stronger systems of accountability and support. Over the last 3 years, BCYF compliance has increased from approximately 30% in 2023 to 96% through expanded capacity building, professional learning, and clearer expectations. More than 2,500 participants are engaged this year in over 300 hours of professional learning, helping strengthen operations, leadership, and long-term sustainability across the youth development ecosystem. And this is what makes BCYF's model what it's designed to do, exemplary throughout our country, that we are pairing stable investment with strong stewardship and pairing organizational growth with long-term youth impact. And now for story one, how BCYF advances a more just Baltimore through transparency. At BCYF, justice means that public dollars move with transparency and trust. Because BCYF was created by Baltimore voters, we take seriously our responsibility to operate in ways that are visible, accountable, and responsive. Accountability and the public design of that accountability is what we're here to report on today. This means that there's public documentation, clear expectations, and strong oversight systems that are built into every way that we operate. Our accountability structures include annual independent financial audits, which have always been clean and reported and are publicly available, our quarterly financial reports to the City of Baltimore, annual City Council hearings like the one today, our annual public budget and program hearing, which will happen in this June, annual reports to the public, the Mayor's Office, and City Council, and public documentation of all grant awards and investments. BCYF also maintains strengthened compliance systems for funded organizations with clear requirements, active support, and increasing rigor over time. Over the past several years, these efforts have significantly strengthened accountability across our network, and that balance really matters of accountability and, of course, transparency. This is not just about gatekeeping, it's about responsible stewardship of public investment that Baltimore voters chose to make in young people. Our grant-making process reflects this commitment to transparency as well. Most funding opportunities follow a structured grant cycle, which includes the pre-application technical assistance, which is offered for free to organizations to help them prepare strong proposals. We have open application periods, due diligence and eligibility review, community and staff evaluation, and a final approval by the BCYF Board of Directors. And this process ensures that funding decisions are community-informed, compliant with public standards, and align with BCYF's mission and values. In some cases, BCYF also uses invitation-based grants, and these opportunities are typically used for strategic partnerships or aligned initiatives where a targeted approach is needed. Importantly, invitation-based grants complement rather than replace BCYF's open grant pathways. They allow BCYF to remain nimble and responsive while maintaining the same standards of documentation, oversight, and accountability. More than 40% of our grant reviewers are young people, ensuring that young people's voices are very present in the decision-making process. Also, our application and review processes are designed to be rigorous but accessible. We also have simplified grant applications. We offer pre-application technical assistance that is provided language access support in addition to working to reduce barriers that have historically limited access for smaller grassroots organizations. Our justice model is not just about compliance, it's about ensuring public systems are worthy of public trust, and BCYF operates with public documentation and strengthened oversight to ensure responsible stewardship of public investment. And now we're going to hear about creativity and the ways that we elevate and innovate in the capacity building or professional learning sphere. At BCYF, creativity means investing in the strength of neighborhood organizations, not only in the programs that they deliver. We know that strong youth outcomes depend on strong community-based institutions, and this is why BCYF does not stop at just grant-making dollars. BCYF invests in neighborhood organizations and supports their growth through professional learning. The majority of BCYF funding goes directly to community-based youth organizations across Baltimore, while a dedicated portion of 25% supports training, coaching, technical assistance that helps those organizations grow stronger over time. This combined approach, our dual investment approach, reflects a core principle of BCYF's work, that strong organizations are better equipped to serve young people. Through multi-year grants, organizations are able to stabilize programs, retain staff, and focus on long-term impact rather than just short-term survival. At the same time, BCYF invests in professional learning so that organizations can strengthen leadership, improve operations, and build more sustainable systems. This includes support in nonprofit infrastructure, financial systems, communications and storytelling, leadership development, board governance, and long-term sustainability planning. Since January 2024, we've had over 1,000 individual participants who have engaged in hundreds of hours of professional learning through BCYF. Our Learning Lab program is the key and the cornerstone of all of that work. It includes learning circles, the pre-application technical assistance, our help desks, our site visits, our credentialing opportunities through our BCREDS program, and ecosystem-wide coverings like The Gathering. The Gathering is a citywide convening that brings together youth development leaders, grassroots organizations, public partners, and funders to exchange ideas. This year we had over 350 folks at the Gathering, and we of course invite you all to attend in 2026. In addition, this year's Learning Lab opened with a national learning exchange featuring leaders from the Harlem Children's Zone, an opportunity for us to learn from a national model, one of the country's most recognized models for place-based youth development. Through this opening plenary, Baltimore practitioners engaged directly with national experts to explore strategies for coordinated youth supports, cross-sector collaboration, and long-term community impact. The Learning Lab is a year-round professional learning experience that's designed to strengthen leadership, infrastructure, and sustainability. This journey will conclude this year and culminate at the community exhibition, where participants showcase the project strategies and organizational improvements that they've developed. It's our adult science fair that occurs every year. This is a joyful gathering celebrating the work of more than 1,000 grassroots leaders, youth development professionals, and community partners that will participate in the Learning Lab this year. So this work is practical and outcome-oriented, and we're really hoping that you'll join us for the community exhibition. Finally, on to abundance, leveraging resources for youth opportunity. At BCYF, abundance is not just about the amount of funding that's invested, it's about creating stability that young people need to thrive. Stable funding creates stable programming, and stable programming supports stronger long-term outcomes for young people. Since launching our grant making, BCYF has invested over $40 million in more than 150 youth-serving organizations, with the majority of those grants structured as multi-year investments. These resources support programs across Baltimore, from athletics and arts to mentoring, leadership, workforce training, and mental wellness, creating more than 17,000 youth program seats across the city. Because when youth programs are stable, young people thrive. And this is the kind of abundance that Baltimore and BCYF is committed to building across our city. One example of this approach is Charm City Youth Athletics, or CCYA, which is a partnership with the Baltimore City Public Schools that reflects our commitment to expanding equitable access to athletics and wellness opportunities for Baltimore's middle school students. For the FY26 CCYA cycle, we had 38 roster applications that were submitted, representing 79 proposed sports programs. After due diligence and joint review with city schools, 17 organizations were selected to the first CCYA roster, with 12 organizations recommended for funding. The recommended grant slate represents $215,000 in investments from Baltimore City Public Schools and BCYF, supporting youth sports programming across Baltimore. These programs will serve approximately 1,180 middle school students across 22 schools, expanding access to athletics and wellness opportunities in communities across our city. These programs also reflect a diverse range of sports and wellness, including rowing, squash, lacrosse, soccer, step, dance, archery, yoga, and fitness training. And they help young people build confidence, teamwork, leadership, and a sense of belonging. CCYA also highlights how BCYF works in partnership with public institutions. And so we're really proud of how this ongoing collaboration with Baltimore City Public Schools helps and contributes to a broader ecosystem of youth support in our city. I want to start also by sharing about the Summer Possibilities Fund. This year, we're making 30 awards intentionally balanced between 15 new organizations to BCYF and 15 current grantees. That balance matters because it allows us to sustain trusted partnerships while also opening pathways for new and emerging leaders and organizations. We're investing $2 million in direct grants, and just as importantly, we're pairing that with professional learning supports, with coaching, help desks, training, because we know that strong programs require both resources and infrastructure. At its core, this funding is about expanding safe, joyful, and enriching summer opportunities for young people in 2026 summer. And what's different this year is that the fund was intentionally shaped by what we've learned over the past few years of working with summer funding. So what's new? There are 3 key shifts that I want to highlight that are new for summer 2026. First was the early decision making. We released our decisions by December 15th, giving organizations real time to plan, whether that's hiring staff, refining programming, or building partnerships. This is not just a process improvement, it's a way to strengthen program quality across the summer. Secondly, a deeper investment in professional learning. This year, we're providing over 100 hours of professional learning opportunities for grantees from summer, and we'll also be making sure that over 100 folks receive health and safety certifications free of charge through BCYF, making sure that we have a safe and healthy and happy summer for the programs that we're supporting. And finally, a strong emphasis on back one slide, a strong emphasis on learning and evaluation. So we're going to share a little bit about a pre-survey that we've already shared, but we have some ongoing data collection as well. I also want to bring up this year, through the President's Fund, one of our invitation-only funds, we were able to award 5 multi-year awards to organizations that were selected through the community review process so that we can test the impact of sustained funding on summer programming specifically. Next slide. Through our surveys so far, we've learned is that there's strong trust and alignment. 96% of the applicants reported a positive experience. 100% of the applicants find themselves aligned to BCYF's values and priorities. And that tells us that our approach, equity and community rooted, is resonating in the city of Baltimore. Second, and most critically, 97% of the applicants said that early decisions are essential to help them plan, hire, and improve program quality. So this confirms that timelines cannot just be operational, that we really need to think of them from a landscape place as critical to the landscape and ecosystem. Third, while our supports are working, 83% of folks found our application technical assistance helpful. 15% did not even utilize them. So that gives us an opportunity to improve awareness and integration of those tools and resources. And finally, BCYF is seen as a lower burden funder in that we are being able to be competitive in this landscape, and that reinforces both our impact and our responsibility to sustain these processes. So finally, to close out around abundance, just thinking about this going beyond a single grant cycle, BCYF is not simply here to fund programs temporarily, but to help organizations and initiatives grow stronger through our investment. And we do that through multi-year grants where possible, invitation-only grants, professional learning and technical assistance, partnerships with schools and public agencies, and stronger organizational systems and compliance and support. And this is the kind of abundance that BCYF is committed to building. And so in closing, BCYF's work does not end with grant making. It continues through the relationships, learning, and community connections that strengthen Baltimore's youth ecosystem. And so we invite the council to experience this work directly through 2 upcoming community events. First, on June 11th, 2026, from 5 to 8, we are hosting our 3rd annual community exhibition. This is our adult science fair, where you can hear directly from the participants of the Learning Lab, grassroots leaders, youth development professionals, community partners who've dedicated the last year to shared learning and capacity building about the work and the impact of our work. The exhibition is that community-style science fair piece where participants showcase their tools, the strategies, and the innovations that they've learned, and you can hear from them directly. And we'd be honored to have members of council join us this year for that celebration of leadership and learning across the youth development ecosystem. And we also invite you and your constituents to join us at our house on April 11th for our Board Light Summer Possibilities Fair. This is a family-centered summer program family fair to connect Baltimore families directly with the youth serving organizations that are offering summer camps, enrichment programs, and learning opportunities this summer for young people from 0 to 24. And it's designed to help families discover these programs, to connect to our grantees, register for summer camps, and know about the opportunities that are available because of this $2 million investment from BCYF. These two events reflect our commitment not only to funding programs, but to building relationships, and we really do hope to see you all there, and we'll make sure to include these graphics in a soon-to-come email to all of you so you can include them in your correspondence with your constituents. It's our responsibility at BCYF to steward public investment with transparency, to strengthen the organizations that make youth opportunity possible in Baltimore, and to help create the stability that young people need to thrive. So when we talk about justice, when we talk about creativity, and when we talk about abundance, we're talking about something very concrete: public purpose, public accountability, neighborhood strength, and long-term opportunity for young people. This is the work that BCYF is committed to. Thank you so much for allowing us to present about our work.
No, just thank you very much for the presentation. I guess I'll start where you ended, which is around the community exhibition. I will say I had a chance to come to the community exhibition last year that you held at Unity Hall, and it was a great opportunity to see what was going on with the grantees. And then I'm also looking forward to attending the one coming up. It'll be in the 9th District, the Biopark. So I'm glad you presented that. It also speaks to the fact of really just doubling back on some of the things you mentioned too, being rooted in the community, but also responsible stewardship. So again, understand for those who are here that this is a yearly exercise that we do, and just getting those kinds of updates. I'm also glad you mentioned that this is a public investment, but it's also it's twofold, right? So we're talking about investing in our young people, also investing in the organizations that are serving them, and that professional learning that is so important, right? Because again, this is serious and critical work. I didn't have any questions, but just those comments, but I do want to turn to our colleagues. Mr. Vice Chair, I know you've been working on some of these issues. Any questions or comments from you?
Just a comment. President Lee, always good to see you, and board members, Chair Simmons, Brandon, glad to have you all here. Thank you so much for the great work you do all year round, supporting our young people in these organizations. There's a lot of negativity, a lot of false narratives, a lot of hate rooted in ignorance, deliberate or otherwise, towards young people and towards our communities. And BCYF is always here to champion those young people and the organizations serving them. You all have done great work stewarding the public resources and making sure that they are deployed effectively in communities across the city in ways that are making real, tangible differences every day. In addition to the work you did highlighting in your report, the CCYA progress, and I want to mention that Councilman Blanchard isn't here today, but I know he's very excited about that work. As a board member, I was really excited to go through the full list of grantees and to imagine the difference that's going to make, those programs going to make in the lives of our young people. So I want to lift that up, as well as the iterations to the Summer of Possibility. And I'm one person, but I really appreciate the thoughtfulness and the deliberateness. As somebody who's run lots of summer programs, those are all really effective things. I know we're going to make a big difference. The last thing I want to lift up, I know last year we spoke about youth membership on the board. You lifted up the amazing youth participation, young people participation in the grant review process, which is encouraging. Also wanted to publicly thank you all for the good work that the board did in raising up young people for board service as well. I know that was a big priority for the year, and it makes a huge difference. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I want to note that we've been joined by Councilmember James Torrance of the 7th District. Thank you for joining us, member of the committee. And I know there was a question from Councilman Jones.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I just want to congratulate everyone on the hard work you continue to do to pour into our young people, but also just want to uplift that increase in compliance from like 30% to 90%. It's incredible. I remember years ago that was a conversation we always having in the public, and just want to commend you all on the concerted effort on getting that number up and making sure organizations are compliant. But then that kind of leads me to my next question. Just wondering, just as far as the vision of the organization, like, is there, or if there is, what is like that next thing as an organization you all would like to focus on to kind of improve as we move forward?
Thank you so much for that opportunity. In the coming year, we'll be focusing on the Baltimore Youth Master Plan. We will be the central convener for convening government folks, youth serving organizations, our eds and meds, our business community, to come together with young people on an even playing field and to create the city's first strategic plan for young people. We'll launch that work this summer by visiting hundreds of summer program sites and creating feedback loops for young people to share what they want out of the plan. And then we'll circle back to adult leaders to join our steering committees with young people as well, to create those strategic plan measurements and to put forward a fully realized plan for the first time. As a longtime Baltimorean, I remember in middle school, we were talking about strategic plans for young people back in the early 90s. And so it's really an honor to be able to be part of the team that will bring that forward. So that'll be our focus for the next year and a half.
Thank you for that. I have one other question. You mentioned the President's Fund. Just a quick question about that. I know it's a invitation-only fund. I know it's something that philanthropy organizations, it's not unfamiliar, it's something we all do. Just one question of mine, with it being public tax dollars, and us also just trying to make sure everyone has access to the opportunities of this fund. Just curious if you can kind of tell us, like, what percentage or how much would be in there? That way it kind of didn't have any, notes on that. That way people can know how much of it is.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity there too. So just a reminder that private philanthropy often has invitation-only funds, and so do federal, state, and local government grant-making bodies as well, including our own local ones here. And so invitation-only funds, while they are targeted in terms of who is receiving the funds, do not in any way eclipse the standard operating procedures around due diligence and requirements. And they also don't eclipse the standard operating procedures around transparency of the request. So in the past, we've used the President's Fund to address urgent matters. For instance, the shooting in Brooklyn years ago, we needed to deploy trusted community organizations pretty quickly into a community, and we were able to use President Fund dollars there. We've also used President Fund dollars to help organizations that are already grantees that don't have the financial capital to be in compliance, meaning they don't have the money to buy the certificates of insurance. That can be quite pricey. Or the load of insurance that's needed to be a BCUF grantee, which usually is more than just general insurance, right? We've got blanket crime insurance of up to $1 million as a requirement for a small organization. It can be pretty pricey. So the President's Fund is always transparent and open, but it is targeted to be able to be prescriptive, and so those funds are not private, they're not kept to the side, they're transparent and open, but it is a targeted way to be able to be nimble and prescriptive when emergencies pop up or when organizations are in trouble.
Thank you. I know Vice President Milton has a comment, and I just want to let folks know, I know we have another hearing that's going to start at 12:30. We have a voting session as well, so hopefully keep our comments and everything tight. So go ahead, please.
So this might just take a little bit of time, if I may, Mr. Chair. I first of all want to commend you and your team for really taking your time and working with this committee, working with the sponsor of this bill, because it is different. And I'm one of the people that basically approved and helped start this bill. And the idea of how it originally started, and as council members then, we were charged with trying to figure out ways to help. We see the organizations in our district that have always, small organizations that have always been doing work. Specifically, I can mention in my area, Park Heights, there are small organizations and leaders that have been doing things in their blocks and in their associations that just needed that little extra money to help. And all of this help would help with those barriers, help teach them how to expand themselves. And lo and behold, this idea came about, and now you are here, because of basically something negative that was put in the media. And I really want to thank you for standing your ground, your team, and working hard, because you haven't really done anything illegal. You're still working and finding your way, like all these other small organizations that are trying to eradicate things that has happened in neglected neighborhoods due to poverty, due to racism. I could go down the list. And I sat here and watched this latest update, and how you are, for me, you highlighted things like barrier, you're trying to help with barriers, mentorships. And we're at a point, all of us are at a point in our neighborhoods in telling our story. And that is so important. And I'm hoping that after this meeting and vote, that you come back to us and just share those stories. Because at the end of the day, we all know how nonprofits have their own board and their director, and the board they're the ones that that do the hard work. And I guess because this is a new idea, I'm hoping this is the only real push. The sponsor and Councilman Parker and I have had deep conversations, and I want to thank you, Councilman Parker, for listening to some of my suggestions and continually coming back to me, because it was hard for me personally to even figure out, why should I be this deep involved? It almost feels like we're interfering. And I'm saying that as a African-American female, again, with an organization that is, the workers are majority African-American or, a minority, but we do have a mixture. But I feel like here we go again, another target. I'm expressing what I'm feeling, and I shared this information with the chair and the sponsor of the bill. So we can't thank you enough for being open and working with, you're showing, if you want to help me, and we're all in this together. So I think this had to be said, and I know I'm here to continue to advocate for this organization and what you do, and how all of you as a team continue to help our young people in Baltimore City. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I know Councilman Ramos had a quick comment or question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quickly, we may have talked about this at a previous hearing, but one of the things that we know around our young people is that they're coming into your doors and coming into school doors with a lot of other things going on. And I just want to make sure that you're also working with your grantees to understand what are those services that are out there for our young people. If somebody is coming in and our young people are going to trust our adults that are working with them, and that they have all of the resources that they need. That's one of the ideas behind community schools. And so I wanted to just make sure that you feel that you have the resources that you're giving to the grantees. And if you don't, to consider me and us a partner to try to get what are all of those things available to our young people and their families, because our young people are coming to you and to our schools with other things that they may need, and it's really up to us to figure out and help them get the resources that they need.
Yes, thank you so much for that. Definitely the idea of creating a more intentional network around mental health support for young people in our city, I think is a really big topic that we all need to be focused on. And BCOF is definitely and our grantees are definitely interested in deepening the quality of that, I would say, the concentric nature of all of those relationships.
I think that is one of the missing links that we have in our city right now. And so I think we're all aware of that and want to try to figure that out. I'm specifically interested in just making sure that our young people have the housing that they need, and that, they're stable in that regard. And if they're not, then I want to make sure that that they and their families, have those avenues. So I'm happy to share that information with you. I'm sure Dr. Brooks, I just saw her in here, has those resources as well. And then this is more of a really personal request. Please have your grantees trained on dealing with ICE. Okay. They're here in our city. And I want to make sure that our young people and their families feel safe coming to you, and that all of your grantees are safe spaces for our young people. So I just am making the plea we can get you training, we can get your grantees training. It's really important that young people are already trusting the spaces that we're funding and with public dollars, and that we want to make sure that they're protected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. I'm about to give you all kinds of titles. Councilmember Ramos. I think we've heard all of the comments. Again, just really thank you for being here. I know we'll have a different addition later on, a voting session after we have our next piece. So in the interim, we'll do some shifting around, some moving of some seats, because now we don't have to vote on this. This is more just informational, just for everybody's edification. And now we will shift into LO 250040, First Step, Strong Start, Early Learning in Baltimore City. So give folks a few seconds to get adjusted as we make that transition. Again, make sure that you are keeping a track of all of your personal belongings so they don't get lost along the way. And give us a few seconds. All right, well, good afternoon once again. As we mentioned, we do have a very packed agenda today, so we're going to move right ahead into our next item for the day, which is LO 250040, First Step, Strong Start, Early Learning in Baltimore City. And again, this is for the purpose of investigating the early learning landscape in Baltimore City in an effort to identify gaps in access, the conditions necessary for fiscal sustainability, and the accountability structures that ensure success for both Head Start and the mixed delivery pre-kindergarten system for 3- and 4-year-old students required by the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. At this point, I'll take some liberty and I'll pass it along to the council president and anyone else who wants to speak, but I will just say this. I'm very fortunate, I'll say this as an educator, I say it as a father, to have investments in early childhood education. The end of my formal education, although I learn every day, happened when I completed my doctorate at the age of 30. However, my first experience in learning was in a Head Start classroom sponsored by Catholic Charities when I was 3 years old. And so I know that foundational building block made all the difference in the world for me and my family. So again, I'm very appreciative of not only that model, but also others that are pouring into our young people. With that, I will transition to Council President Cohen.
Thank you to Dr. Chair Bullock. Thank you to all my colleagues who are here, to all of our esteemed panelists and guests that have joined us. This is a priority for this city council. Advancing early childhood education is something that Chair Bullock, myself, Mayor Scott, all of us care deeply about. Most of us that are sitting up here are parents, most of us with relatively young kids. And I know that as a father of two, my 2 kids both attend city schools. Pre-K was life-saving for my children. I just briefly will say, my daughter in particular was a pandemic kid. The only people that she knew her first couple of years were really me and her mom. And as a result, she was a little anxious, a little shy, and it was the love and support of her preschool teacher Ms. Camaneris at Hampstead Hill Academy, who turned my daughter into Baltimore's biggest diva. And so I am forever grateful. My son, Elias, is now in Ms. Camaneris' class, and he is getting the same treatment that his sister got, and it is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And we also know that many working parents struggle when it comes to early childhood access, that Baltimore is doing better than the rest of the state at kindergarten readiness, but we still have a very long way to go. And it is our goal to get to universal pre-kindergarten, starting at age 3, and to be a city that embraces childcare for all of our earliest learners, particularly high-quality educational childcare. Data from the Baltimore City Early Childhood Advisory Council, the BCAC, suggests that children who were enrolled in an early learning program, such as pre-K, were more likely than their peers to be ready for kindergarten, as assessed by the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment. When kids have a strong start and are prepared for kindergarten, they're more likely to graduate from high school and go on to post-secondary education, including college and vocational training. And I want to thank Chair Bullock for this series of hearings that we've been having. In the first hearing on childcare on January 29th, we learned that childcare has gotten more expensive for Baltimore's families, and many providers have been closing up shop since the pandemic due to rising costs. We've lost about 20% of our family care and childcare centers. Think about that. That is 1 in 5 centers have closed in the past 5 years, while our population is blessedly starting to grow. I would call a 20% contraction in any sector of our economy a recession, and that's what many families are dealing with when it comes to childcare. Before we take definitive action as a council to make these goals reality, it is key that we understand the nuances, the challenges, and the successes in the early learning landscape, not just in Baltimore, but across the country. That's why I'm glad to have Casey Peaks from the Center for American Progress here to provide context for how Baltimore City is doing relative to our peers. As we look to make smart investments in education, it's clear we should start with early learning programs. And in Baltimore, we have no shortage of talent. Every day, thousands of dedicated 0 through 5 care and education providers, including those from our panelists, Catholic Charities, make sure that tens of thousands of our city's kids have a space to grow, learn, play, and develop skills. At the same time, we have excellent partners such as City Schools, the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success, the Fund for Educational Excellence, BCAC, the Early Childhood Education Advisory Council, the Maryland State Department of Education. Thank you for joining us. That supports our educators and caregivers. We are lucky to have representatives from these institutions here today. Thank you for your presence and your partnership. Thank you to President Brown, who I see from the Baltimore Teachers Union. We know we've got amazing early childhood educators doing the work with us from City Schools. I'll just close by saying we need to make sure all families have one place they can go to choose to enroll in a program that is right for their child. We need to bring universal pre-K and early learning access to all of our 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds in our city. And it's going to take all of us working together to make it happen. With that, again, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President, for sharing your family's story, as well as mentioning some of the partners that we have in the room that we're going to dive right into now. So with that, we're going to shift over to Olatunde Clark, co-chair for the Baltimore City Early Childhood Advisory Council. And as we shift, I'm asking our panelists to try to keep their comments to 5 minutes so we can get through all those presentations, have opportunity for questions and public testimony. So again, thank you.
All right, thank you. Indeed, I'm Olatunde Clark. I am one of the co-chairs of the Baltimore City ECAC, the Early Childhood Advisory Council. I'm also the Vice President of Child and Family Services at St. Vincent de Paul of Baltimore. We serve a little under 600 families through the Head Start and Early Head Start model. For today, I want to offer you 3 frames, 3 fundamental things to remember as you hear all the other presentations and testimonies. The first one has to do with why early childhood, why now, why the urgency. 90% of brain development happens within the first 5 years. And so that's our why, right? There are lots of places we could intervene, lots of age groups, lots of demographics, but why here, why now? It's that statistic. The second thing I want to offer you is that early childhood providers, that we are the workforce behind the workforce in Baltimore City. The early care and education system is comprised of educators that, regardless of the setting, we're all professionals. We all require specialized credentials, and we have to maintain ongoing professional development. We make it possible for Baltimore families to get to work. That was very clear in the pandemic when we started to figure out who were the essential workers, who's not actually included, and who can the city not function without. And the third thing I want you to remember is that this is a prenatal to 5 system. That today's hearing focuses on 3 and 4-year-olds, but that's only a subgroup of the whole, and that for this system to work, we have to prioritize the full continuum. To that end, here is our matrix of members and providers that are inside of the ECAC. The ECAC is a diverse early childhood coalition that's been working together since 2019 to strengthen early care and education systems in Baltimore City. One of the things we take pride in is that since 2023, spring of 2023, we convened a work group on mixed delivery. You're gonna see in the next slides the fruit of all that labor. What you see here also, though, is partners from Baltimore infants and toddlers all the way to city schools. You see private providers, you see community providers. That's what early child care really is. It's the full gamut. Next slide, this one focuses on the blueprint and the levels of support. The blueprint has 5 pillars. The early childhood priority is often referred to as pillar 1. It includes the expansion of full-day pre-K to low-income 3 and 4-year-olds. And what I want you to remember, that is a subgroup of a subgroup. Tier 1 is children and families with income levels up to 300% of federal poverty level. Those slots are 100% supported by the state through the pre-K program. Tier 2 is families 301% to 600%, and they're supported on a sliding scale. Anything not supported is out-of-pocket expense for the families. Tier 3 are families 600% or above of the federal poverty level. They get 0 support. It's all family out-of-pocket. This is an example. It's not of wealth. This is making a little bit of money and no longer qualifying for services you really need. 600% of the federal poverty level is not high income. Next slide. Oh, one thing to note here, public schools do have the ability to waive, like with the sliding scale and the unsupported slots, they have the ability to waive those charges. Private providers don't, and that is what's driving people out of business. It's out of pocket for parents. If they can't make it, it's a provider not making their, their dollars, their financials. So, Baltimore City has been investing in pre-K since 2008, long before the blueprint. That Head Start really matters. The city currently has about 4,686 publicly funded pre-K seats, and the capacity to provide pre-K for up to 98% of Tier 1 4-year-olds. So that's just the subset of the lowest federal poverty level. Well, that's 300%, just those folk. When you start including Tier 2 and Tier 3 families, the statistic drops to like 60%. When you include just Tier 1 3-year-olds, it's less than 10%. And that's supposing we used all slots that come through the pre-K funds for 3-year-olds, which is, not the case. But if we did, we still wouldn't meet 10% of the need. Mixed delivery is growing. That's the second box. 98%, that's of the Tier 1 4-year-olds. 100%, it's actually really 300% since 2022. The number of private providers has tripled from 6 to 18. The most recent statistic has 18 private providers. And so that is an increase. That's close to 515 slots just for the private providers. The next slide talks about these actual concerns. The gaps are real and the gaps are urgent. Universal pre-K is not, right now, the mixed delivery legislation is not a universal model. It's designed to provide public funding for the lowest level of families. Baltimore City, there we have the capacity serving 98% of them. Again, when you talk about all the tiers, it's only 65, pulling in 3s, less than 10. Community-based providers, the most recent statistics have us up to 10 to 12%. As of last year, what you would find in the landscape analysis, it would have 8%. So at 10%, we're above the other jurisdictions, but nowhere near the goal. The goal is to have 20% by this year. And then by 28, 29, it's supposed to be a 50-50 split between the school system and private providers. We're nowhere near that, and I'm not certain we're on track to make it there at all. And I will say that no jurisdiction right now is meeting this mandate. No one is near 20. And Baltimore City is among the most progressed with the nearly 10%, but that's not where we need to be. And we say that this is not a local failure. It's actually a statewide signal that the model isn't working the way it is. Currently, about 800 kindergartners enter school with no formal prior care. They're 3 times less likely to be kindergarten ready, which impacts their ELA and MCAP scores, and on-time graduation and college and career readiness. When my daughter looked at this, she's like, why are you jumping to college? I said, because there's statistics, and people plan against these statistics. And people look and they track. And that's how we jump, because we can tell.
I know we're getting a little short on time, but.
Oh, boy. Okay. I'll be fast. Mixed delivery and public pre-K is not only a public school program. It's a community-based program that includes providers like Head Start, center-based childcare, family-based childcare. Mixed delivery allows families to choose the setting that best meets their needs. However, to participate fully, providers need to meet quality ratings, they need to have credentialed staff, they need to pay teachers at the public school rate, and they don't receive equivalent state funding or support. Many cannot afford to participate when they want to. There's a heavy burden that's shifted to families. Thanks to partners like the Fund for Excellence, Sienna Partners, Maryland State Child Care Coalition, Baltimore City Child Care Resource Centers, and private funders, providers are able to access support. They go and they get grant work for people to help them access the support and stay eligible. It is not easy. And people who want to participate are not able to participate. What we have is a mixed delivery system that's attractive, but currently does not have the support or the capacity to support the people who need it. We're building a system that they need, but without the infrastructure. And I'm gonna stop there.
Just thank you for laying the context, giving us so much data and so much information. I think it's really important. And you talk about the different models and where those gaps are, so I appreciate that. And even as you talk about providers, I think it's also useful to have providers in the room. And we do have one, and I know Council President was able to go and visit Lynn's kids. And so India Ivy, please come on up, give us a few words as we transition to our next panelist. But again, having folks in the room, I think, is really critical to this conversation. So I appreciate you being here. Hit the button before we run right. It'll turn red. The person. The person. There we go.
Is that better? Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the Education, Youth, and Older Adults Committee, and distinguished guests. My name is India Ivory, and I'm the Educational Director and Pre-K teacher at Lynn's Kids Childcare and Pre-Kindergarten Programs in East Baltimore City. I stand before you not only as a citizen, but as an educator and a small business owner who works tirelessly to support families in Baltimore and in Maryland. I am committed to ensuring children in our city have access to high-quality early learning experiences. Thanks to the Maryland Pre-K Expansion Grant, we can offer free, high-quality pre-K to the families who need it the most. But let me be clear, this work is not easy. It demands an extraordinary level of coordination, compliance, staffing, and financial management to meet the standards required. Climbing through Maryland Excels and working toward accreditation has required intentional investments in curriculum, teacher credentials, classroom quality, and continuous improvement. These are not just check boxes. This is the real work of preparing children for kindergarten and beyond. These are the hard behind-the-scene moments that support the systems to implement and sustain quality. At Lynn's Kids, we do this work every day. We serve families, we support working parents, and we build a foundation for leaders right here in Baltimore City. But if we are serious about expanding access, we also must be serious about sustainability. Providers need consistent funding, timely reimbursements, clear and predictable systems that fully cover the cost of high-quality care. I urge the board to consider reliable, adequate funding streams and payment timelines. We ask that providers are empowered so we can meet the state standards. We cannot expand access without first strengthening these critical supports. As we look at the Children and Youth Fund and the future of learning in Baltimore City, I urge you to continue investing not just in access, but in quality, workforce support, and long-term sustainability. Because when we invest in early childhood, we're not just supporting the children, we're strengthening the families, the communities, and the future of Baltimore City. We're planting seeds strategically, and the fruits of our labor give dividends that evolve through generations to come. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story. Thank you for your dedication to Baltimore's children. Together, let's continue to champion early learning and build a stronger future for every child and every family. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you not only for your testimony, but the work you do on a daily basis, helping to steer our children in the right direction. And it's not lost on us, as you mentioned, us working parents and what it means to have that, and just doubling back to what our first presenter mentioned in terms of the workforce behind the workforce, but also that you're a professional who's doing this work and the level of sustainability that's important. So again, just thank you for sharing that. Really, really appreciate that work.
I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Absolutely. And so now we have this conversation shifting. We've talked about Baltimore City's landscape. We're going to do some more about that. We had an independent provider, but then also let's look at this from a broader perspective. So I know we have Casey Peaks, Senior Director of Early Childhood Policy for the Center for American Progress. Again, I think this is another element that's useful for our conversation, so please go right ahead.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Casey Peaks, and I serve as the Senior Director of Early Childhood Policy at the Center for American Progress, an independent policy institute focused on improving the lives of Americans through progressive policy solutions. On our early childhood team, we primarily monitor federal policy and funding streams while also highlighting best practices happening in states and local communities. Given that one of the purposes of this hearing is to identify the conditions necessary for fiscal sustainability, I'm going to focus the first portion of my presentation on federal funding landscape. So at the federal level, 3 major programs provide funding for early care and education. Through the Child Care and Development Block Grant, which funds in part Maryland's Child Care Scholarship Program, Maryland receives roughly $123 million in fiscal year 2026 to help families afford child care. Through Head Start, providers receive about $136 million, although those funds flow directly from the federal government to local grantees rather than through the state. Baltimore City receives roughly $9 million in Head Start funding to serve a little over 2,000 seats. And earlier this year, Maryland received $14.75 million through the Preschool Development Block Grant Birth Through 5 program, which is a competitive grant program, and you'll hear a little bit more about that from other panelists. So although the funds on the previous slide have already been appropriated by Congress for fiscal year 2026, under the current administration, states and providers unfortunately cannot always depend on receiving those funds in a timely manner. So in the child care space, this year started with unfounded claims of widespread fraud in the child care subsidy program, which caused the Trump administration to freeze funds of child care to 5 Democratic-led states. That was about $10 billion in California, Colorado, Illinois, Minnesota, and New York, while asking the remaining states, including Maryland, to submit justifications and data not required by federal law in order to draw down their child care funding. adding administrative burdens to state agencies, uncertainty, and potential delays. Also, the widespread allegations of fraud have also caused harassment to providers across the country, particular immigrant providers, particularly African immigrant providers. The funding freeze is currently on hold pending litigation. At the same time, the Trump administration has proposed new regulations for child care and development funding. The child care regulations that they propose would rescind some Biden-era rules that aim to stabilize payment structures for providers, which is really critical for sustainability for those providers, and they also were reducing costs for families. New Head Start regulations are also on the way and are expected in the coming months. On Head Start in particularly, last year was very difficult for the program. A leaked draft of the president's budget last year proposed eliminating the program completely. Fortunately, that was not included in the final budget, but concerns about Head Start remains, especially with regional office closures across the country and the mass layoff of federal staff. Head Start grantees faced their own defend the spend challenges last year, and litigation around that is also pending. And finally, I think it's important to highlight the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that the Congress passed last summer. Although it didn't directly impact childcare, it does require some states to make difficult decisions around Medicaid and SNAP, which could strain state resources for childcare. But fortunately, during this challenging period, Baltimore actually has very, very well-placed congressional delegation on very key committees to help sort through the issues at the federal level. So Senator Alsobrooks sits on the Senate Help Committee, which oversees education programs. So she oversees the Child Care and Development Block Grant, Head Start, and also preschool development grants. Senator Van Hollen sits on the Appropriations Committee, so he holds the purse strings in Congress, so he's also helpful in the funding levels that we see each year. Particularly, I think Congressman Mufime is very important at this time. The House Oversight Committee, which he sits on, has been really leading the charge on the child care fraud allegations and looking into the delays in funding. So should Maryland ever have their funding delayed or inaccessible, he's a very key partner. Also, earlier it was mentioned that child care is the workforce behind the workforce, so it's often overlooked that the House Small Business Committee is also critical here. Not only are employers concerned about the child care crisis, but also many child care providers themselves are small business leaders. And finally, I am just going to highlight some important mixed delivery considerations for the council. So the blueprint for Maryland's future requires a mixed delivery model, meaning local school systems must partner with private childcare providers. And this is best practice not only because it builds on the existing supply of where children are already during the day, but it also is really important that even though we're talking about 3 and 4-year-olds, when you include childcare providers, you're also maintaining the supply of infant and toddler care. Because our team tracks early childhood policy across the country, we've identified Boston and Multnomah County in Oregon, which includes Portland, Oregon, as key models to base off of, not only because they're mixed delivery, but particularly because they have been inclusive of home-based providers, which is very rare in the mixed delivery space. And Multnomah County in particular focused their preschool expansion to make sure that it didn't have any impact on infant and toddler supply, address workforce shortages, and supported community providers as best possible. So the common thread in both Boston and Multnomah County is that public expansion is paired with intentional support for community-based providers, particularly home-based and family childcare. Thank you and for the opportunity to speak, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. I know we'll go to questions after all the presentations are over, but I do want to thank you for laying out the national context. It's not lost on us that elections have consequences, and we look at what happens at the federal level that affects all of us in different states around the country, including Maryland. So whether we're talking about food assistance, if we're talking about, as Councilmember Ramos mentioned, immigration enforcement, and how these issues are framed is very key. And so again, making sure that we understand the lay of the land. And fortunately, as you referenced the state of Maryland, we have a delegation that is working to support these very critical issues. So again, thank you for giving that context. I do want to shift now to Jenna Smith, Executive Director of Early Learning for the Maryland State Department of Education.
Thank you, President Cohen and Chair Bullock, for inviting us to join you today to talk about high quality early learning in Maryland. My name is Jenna Smith. I'm the Executive Director for Early Learning and Quality Improvement at the Maryland State Department of Education, and I'm joined by my colleague, Dr. Nakia Washington, Pre-K and Mixed Delivery Program Manager. And we are pleased to join you today to share about how MSDE is supporting our youngest learners in Baltimore City and how we are planning for the future. Back in January, several of my MSDE colleagues, including State Superintendent Dr. Carrie Wright, joined you to discuss the Child Care Scholarship Program's footprint in Baltimore City. I have the pleasure of sharing with you today about how Maryland is endeavoring to expand access to high-quality early learning opportunities for every child in Baltimore and across the state through Maryland's publicly funded pre-K program. Dr. Washington?
Thank you. The foundation of the state's public pre-kindergarten system stems from our state's landmark legislation, the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. The Blueprint established a 10-year plan to significantly increase state education funding. It is built around 5 key pillars aimed at enriching student experiences, accelerating outcomes, and enhancing educational quality statewide. The first pillar is dedicated to early childhood education and recognizes the critical role of education in a child's early years. It emphasizes that affordable, high-quality early education opportunities for Maryland's children are crucial in ensuring all children are prepared to enter school successfully. Expanding access to Maryland's public pre-kindergarten program is a major component of the Blueprint. Participating programs must meet high-quality standards in teacher education and credentials, classroom practice, and Maryland Excels quality ratings. Maryland is already making progress towards our ambitious enrollment and quality goals. In FY26, 319 classrooms participated in the pre-kindergarten expansion grant, with 38 teachers meeting lead teacher requirements through the new 10-year experience pathway. Other participating lead teachers hold a bachelor's degree or higher. Looking forward, in FY27, MSDE will expand the use of the CLASS tool to support program quality in classrooms using funds from a preschool development grant, which I'll describe more detail later. The CLASS tool helps us evaluate the quality of teacher-child interactions, which are important marker of quality in early learning settings. Of the current pre-K grantees across the state, 56% reached Excel's quality rating 5, 24% hold quality rating 4, and 19% have a quality rating 3. With these quality standards in mind, we can look at private provider, LEA, and total pre-K enrollment over time in Maryland. Statewide pre-K enrollment has increased since 2018, despite a slight increase in school year 25-26. Enrollment in publicly funded private pre-kindergarten programs is growing at a faster rate than in local education agencies in the state. When we focus on Baltimore City's pre-K enrollment, again, we see an increase over time despite a slight decrease in school year 2025-2026. Enrollment in private pre-K programs in the city has more than doubled, while enrollment through classrooms in public school continues to outpace enrollment in private settings. Total LEA pre-K enrollment also declined slightly during this school year. MSDE is investigating why enrollment decreased, which may be attributed to declining birth rates, as we have seen also lower kindergarten enrollment. Jenna?
As mentioned, Maryland Excels, Maryland's quality rating and improvement system underpins all early learning across the state, including publicly funded pre-K. Earning a Maryland Excels quality rating of 3 or higher is a requirement to participate in pre-K expansion. As you can see in this table, child care centers and family child care homes with Maryland Excels quality ratings of 3 to 5 have increased from 2024 to 2026, resulting in a 40% increase in eligibility to participate in pre-K expansion since January of 2024. With 72% of all licensed child care programs in the state participating, Maryland Excels continues to increase family access to high-quality early learning experiences. Across Maryland, 5,012 total child care centers, family child care homes, and public pre-kindergarten programs participate in Maryland Excels. In Baltimore City, looking specifically at child care programs first, 92% of all licensed child care programs in the city participate in Maryland Excels. 60% of all licensed Baltimore City programs participating in Maryland Excels are family child care programs. Focusing on our publicly funded pre-K programs, there are 37 public pre-K programs in the city, and all public pre-K programs are required to participate in Maryland Excels. When it comes to Maryland Excels quality ratings in Baltimore City, 12 public pre-K programs, making up 32% of the total participating programs, have a quality rating of 4 or 5. There are 105 child care centers and 100 family child care programs in Baltimore City with quality ratings of 3, 4, or 5. Like our early learning providers across the state, MSDE is committed to continuous quality improvement. So I am excited to share more about our innovative upcoming work.
As Casey just mentioned, we're excited to share that MSDE's Division of Early Childhood was recently awarded a one-year $14.75 million preschool development grant. This award will help MSDE accelerate our work to continue strengthening Maryland's mixed delivery system. This funding will allow MSDE to advance several priorities, including unifying the early childhood system, expanding access, quality, and sustainability, aligning and sharing data systems. Focusing in on the priority of unifying the early childhood system, this grant supports developing a centralized pre-K enrollment portal. We plan to identify current system issues, such as not having real-time enrollment data, and then develop and apply improved systems like offering real-time data within a comprehensive directory. This work wouldn't be possible without the additional support of Senators Also Brooks and Van Hollen, who championed early childhood education in Congress and helped us secure an additional $500,000 to support the development of the centralized pre-K system through a congressional earmark. The system-wide improvements MSDE can accomplish with this funding will strengthen programs and allow us to expand access to high-quality early learning opportunities for children across Maryland, including Baltimore City. Thank you for inviting us to speak today.
Thank you again for being here. Again, having the Maryland State Department of Education representatives be here means a lot to us because it shows that this is a critical issue not only for us locally, but for the state. So again, thank you for being here and providing that level of detail, but also focusing on high quality and excellence in education and not just the standard. So again, we appreciate that. With that, we'll now shift to Dr. Deborah Brooks, Executive Director for the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success. Dr. Brooks, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, committee members, Council President. I am Dr. Brooks, the Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success, and I have with me my colleague. You want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. I'm Shannon Burrows Campbell. I'm the Executive Director of Baltimore City Head Start.
And together we will be providing information around Baltimore City's Head Start. So we're going to provide just an overview of what Baltimore City Head Start is, the services and partnerships, as well as some strengths and challenges. So again, Baltimore City Head Start. Head Start is federally funded preschool and family development, and it began in 1965. From its inception, there has always been a mayor and city council of Baltimore City Head Start. And from its inception is from 1965. And I just want to be really, really clear. Head Start, as we've heard from previous panelists, serves pregnant women, infants, toddlers, preschool-age children through early Head Start and Head Start. So Head Start, yes, focuses on early learners, but a whole family approach. And so I wanted to make sure that we all really understood that. And it is really designed to make sure that we are serving children and families that are living in poverty. So it's about strengthening the stability and well-being of the family, but also of our youngest learners. Today, there are 5 federally funded grantees to deliver Head Start and early Head Start across the city. And those grantees are, again, the Mayor and City Council of Baltimore, which is Baltimore City Head Start, and that would be some of those Head Starts are Dayspring, Union Baptist, and DBCC, as well as Associate Catholic Charities, St. Vincent de Paul of Baltimore, the Y of Central Maryland, and Maryland Family Network, which we have approximately 2,000 Head Start and 300 early Head Start slots, which are funded across, again, Baltimore neighborhoods. Head Start staff are critical to support our children and families through early Head Start and Head Start. Again, as I talked about, this is a whole child and whole family approach. Some of the resources and services that are provided are high quality early childhood education, health and developmental screenings for our youngest learners, dental services, mental health supports, as well as behavioral health supports, nutrition services, and family engagement and support. What makes Head Start unique are the dedicated family service staff that work directly with our parents and caregivers. We set family goals. We work across city agencies around workforce development. They work very closely with our Community Action Partnership staff as well to provide additional resources and supports. We connect them to community resources, as I just provided that example, and also provide stability and long-term success for our families. Again, Head Starts are primarily federally funded and highly regulated, as we heard from our previous panelists. Some programs receive state funding to participate in the mixed delivery, and we'll hear throughout around mixed delivery. I also want to focus and talk about, when we talk about mixed delivery, if there is a child that is receiving specialized instruction, they can receive those specialized services through infants and toddlers on IEP through a mixed delivery service. So though they are eligible to receive those same type of services in Head Start, in a home child care provider, as well as in city schools. Head Start prioritizes 3-year-old enrollment because research also shows greater outcomes when we experience early intervening services for our youngest learners. And again, we continue to support the continuity of care for our youngest learners, as well as providing stability for our families.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks. And that's really important to note there is that, when we build this pipeline of Head Start serving 3-year-olds with pre-K serving 4s and children enter school ready to learn at kindergarten, it's really, really critical for our city. Parents always have the choice as to where they want to attend, but Head Start can serve children 3 to 5 years of age. But building that pipeline really does show better outcomes, and ensuring that Head Start is a key partner around mixed delivery ensures that we can provide that gap and serve 3-year-old children. Head Start matters because while we can ensure that children enter kindergarten ready to learn, we also ensure that they are ready to learn and thrive whatever their next placement is, whether it's pre-K or kindergarten. We also ensure that they receive critical health and developmental services, as well as we really work with our families to ensure stability and engagement so that they become engaged throughout their child's education when they move into public school. And so we definitely see ourselves, all of us here, the Head Start grantees that are here, as key partners in Baltimore's early childhood ecosystem and achieving the goals for mixed delivery in the state of Maryland's blueprint. So our return on our investment, you've seen the statistics, for every $7 invested, or for every $1 invested, there's a $7 return. There's huge gains by investing in early childhood education, and we can't say that enough. We are grateful for our federal funding to be able to provide Head Start services, and we definitely know that with families that participate in Head Start, that there's an increase in school readiness and literacy. They have a higher likelihood of high school graduation. There's a reduced need for special education and other services, as well as we just are increasing the parent engagement and workforce stability. And so that investment shows long-term educational and economic outcomes for children and families, but also for our city and for the work that we do here. But there are challenges, and you'll hear that from every panelist. But for Head Start, we want to preserve our federal funding. That's our number one. But workforce recruitment and retention is really a sticky issue for us. Head Start funds educators at a very low wage compared to our partners at the K through 12 system. So recruiting, retaining, and hiring qualified teachers and family services staff is our number one issue, because in order to have them, we can keep our classrooms open and we can keep serving children and families. Our facilities are aging. There's infrastructure issues. We need investments for facilities. Of course, the threat to federal funding it's a complex system that really is going to have an impact on our ability to provide services. And so our goal is to sustain our services, to strengthen us, to remain key partners in this, and to expand our reach as we go forward. Thank you.
And we'll take questions at the end.
All right, and thank you both for that presentation. I will say it also connects to some of the things we talked about before, the federal environment that we find ourselves in and what it means in terms of funding. But even from a longitudinal point of view, as you mentioned, 1965, again, thinking about another presidential administration under Lyndon Johnson, right? And so you talk about the Great Society and the war on poverty. And one of the ways to address that war on poverty is around both education and nutrition, right? And then you think about how we try to close that income gap, that wage gap, that wealth gap, educational gap. I will also say, you talk about that return on investment, and I'm living proof of that, right? So again, we think about what it looks like, and it's probably my favorite part of today, no disrespect to anybody, because I know we're in the Head Start moment. So we're shifting from Baltimore City over to Catholic Charities. So again, appreciate Rudy Zellman, we're going to Deneen Rufus for Baltimore City Head Start Administrator for Catholic Charities. Again, just thank you for being here. It just means a lot for me personally, but I know for the whole council and committee for you being here. So thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I am grateful to have this opportunity to give a very brief history on Head Start in Baltimore City. A lot has already been mentioned by other panelists, in particular, Shannon and Dr. Brooks, as it relates to Head Start programming in Baltimore City. As just mentioned, Head Start was launched nationally in 1965. I'm sorry, let me proceed. And that launch was included in President Lyndon B. Johnson's War on Poverty, as it was just mentioned. As Head Start was launched nationally, programming was available in Baltimore City, providing family support, comprehensive education related to health, nutrition, and family involvement services, coupled with providing early childhood education to ensure that children were prepared for kindergarten and beyond. So trying to close that achievement gap has been a goal of Head Start for many, many years throughout Baltimore City. And this two-generational and holistic approach was designed for children and families that were identified as being low income. After many years of our most vulnerable families receiving Head Start services in 2014, there was some restructuring to Head Start in the city in terms of grantee oversight. As mentioned, these grantees that you see, constituents on the screen listed, became grantees over Head Start and early Head Start programs in Baltimore City. Although this restructuring took place, service delivery was still crucial for families throughout Baltimore City. So the services were still streamlined and families still received what they needed, although there was some restructuring that happened behind the scenes, if you will. So each grantee receives federal funding to operate the Head Start programs, adhere to federal regulations, and maintains fiscal responsibility. These grantees make up the Baltimore City Head Start Collab, partnering in various ways to ensure that children and families receive high-quality programming across the city, in each quadrant of the city, might I highlight, meaning North, South, East, and West Baltimore. We each have our own separate program goals and objectives. However, we share the common goal of ensuring that the most vulnerable children and families of Baltimore City thrive and succeed. I think it's important to highlight the richness and the historical component of Baltimore City. Neighborhoods are very different throughout the city, even in each program. what we may see 3 blocks away from one site is very, very different. So our collab, we partner, we ensure, although we may be in the backyards of each other's programs, we are serving the most vulnerable, and that no children and no families are all serviced throughout the city, no matter where they're located. So we had an impact report that was completed in 2022. These are just some of the highlights from that impact report. And might I add, this is obviously 2 years out of COVID. So some pretty significant numbers, considering that we had to pivot into virtual learning and then to hybrid learning, all while navigating with families that were very, very uncertain about many things. So services to children, we had about 95% of the children receive comprehensive services. They lived or were below the federal poverty guidelines. 100% of the children enrolled received comprehensive services, including school readiness, health, and mental health and nutrition services. 431 infants and toddlers were served, and over 2,000 3- and 4-year-olds were served. Over 487,000 meals were served, and over 2,000 developmental screens were conducted. 86% of children received follow-up to medical and dental care. 90% of the families who requested a service received that service, and 82% of families who set a goal achieved or were expected to achieve that goal by the end of the year. Over 1,000 parents participated in training during the program, and about 783 families received holiday support, school supplies, clothing, etc. 417 parents volunteered. So, in a nutshell, after 60 years, Head Start still works.
So again, thank you very much for that presentation. As I mentioned, I started in a Catholic Charities Head Start, so I know what it means, but also just lift up the work that Catholic Charities is doing here in Baltimore. A couple weeks ago, or it seems like months ago now, we had a hearing around school closures, and one of the schools in the 9th District that closed is Alexander Hamilton. But what breathed new life into that building is Catholic Charities coming in there to also create an intergenerational center. So there'll be opportunities for senior programming, for workforce development, but also Head Start. So again, appreciate that kind of investment, particularly in our neighborhoods like in West Baltimore. So
Thank
again,
you for highlighting that.
Oh, absolutely glad to do so. All right, with that, we're then going to shift to Rudy Zellman, Program Director for Pre-K Expansion from the Fund for Educational Excellence.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Rudy Zellman. I serve as the Program Director for Pre-K Expansion at the Fund for Educational Excellence. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Let's see if I... Well, now you're getting a preview. Okay. All right, through the blueprint, as you've heard, Maryland is making historic investments in the expansion of high-quality, publicly funded pre-K. Here in Baltimore, this presents us with a tremendous opportunity to expand pre-K access. I also want to start by grounding us in the importance of expanding pre-K through a mixed delivery system, which I know we've talked a lot about today, and simply means that high-quality pre-K is available to families across multiple settings. Often when we talk about expanding pre-K, we automatically think of adding more seats in public schools. But as we look at Baltimore City's landscape, much of that expansion we're likely to see will happen through our city's childcare providers and ecosystem. And this is essential for many reasons. The first, families of young children need options to find a setting that best meets their needs. The second is a practical one. Public schools alone can't meet the demand. Mixed delivery allows us to utilize existing facility space outside of the school system. And the third reason, and perhaps most important, is that childcare programs rely on the enrollment of 3- and 4-year-olds to remain financially viable. Pre-K is just one piece of the prenatal to 5 system. If pre-K expansion does not include childcare providers, we risk destabilizing the very programs that many families depend on. In this slide, you'll see Baltimore City's growth in community-based childcare providers over the last 4 years. These are providers who have received funding from the state to implement public pre-K at their sites. We've seen real momentum here, both in the growth of providers and seats, and as you've heard, are among the jurisdictions leading the state in pre-K expansion. And here you can see a map of our city's publicly funded pre-K sites. In addition to the seats available to families in Baltimore City Public Schools, families can also access high-quality publicly funded slots in childcare centers, Head Starts, and home-based family childcare providers. And this momentum is not happening by accident. What we've learned is that most childcare providers need significant support long before they can even think about applying to become public pre-K sites. Over the past several years, local philanthropy has helped pilot the partnerships and infrastructure needed to grow Baltimore's mixed delivery pre-K system, offering important proof points on what works and what could be scaled. This slide shows the return on investment on about $175,000 in philanthropic investments managed by the fund and implemented through partnerships with the Maryland State Child Care Association and the Baltimore City Child Care Resource Center. As you can see, that support helped 9 childcare providers secure $2.6 million in state funding and created 190 publicly funded pre-K seats for families. It also helped providers sustain and strengthen those seats over time. So far, every program receiving first-year implementation support has retained its seats year to year. In FY26, Baltimore added 6 new childcare pre-K providers, the most of any jurisdiction in the state, and 5 of those providers came through the fund's technical assistance cohort. These investments have also helped 5 programs improve their Excels rating through a pilot program this past fall with Baltimore City Child Care Resource Center, ensuring that these programs can now compete for state pre-K funding. And we've also been proud to support 8 new providers in submitting competitive applications for the current round of pre-K expansion grant funding. So the takeaway here is that investing in our providers yields strong returns. These early investments show that upfront support can help unlock public dollars, expand access for families, and strengthen provider quality and stability. And there's also another piece of the puzzle that we need to address. The ECAC's landscape analysis shows that Baltimore needs to do 2 things at once. We need to keep focusing on expanding high-quality early learning seats, and we also need to do more to connect families to the seats that already exist. Some current seats in pockets of our city are going unfilled, especially in communities where we know that children would benefit the most from pre-K. Families face real barriers to enrollment, including wraparound care needs, limited awareness, paperwork, and mistrust or misunderstanding about programs. To better understand these challenges, the fund is partnering with UVA and Burke to conduct an analysis of kindergartners who show up without any prior care, as well as family preferences and enrollment patterns in our pre-K enrollment system. The city has also already taken an important step by investing $150,000 in a citywide pre-K enrollment campaign through the mayor's Early Childhood Education Initiative. The fund will soon release an RFP for this work, and we're convening partners from city schools, Head Start, and childcare to help shape this citywide campaign. As public pre-K continues to expand, especially in childcare settings, Baltimore needs a stronger pre-K brand and a more coordinated enrollment system so that families understand their options across settings and know how and when to enroll. Many families still may not realize that publicly funded pre-K seats exist outside the public school system, including options for many 3-year-olds. As the mixed delivery system continues to grow, Baltimore needs an enrollment strategy that helps families navigate options across city schools, Head Start, and community-based childcare. We started to build the foundation for a more inclusive outreach campaign, starting with the citywide pre-K enrollment kickoff last month, Ready, Set, Pre-K. I saw a few of you there. And the fund has also worked with our partners in the Early Learning Office at city schools to build a centralized website, baltimoreprek.com, to ensure that families are able to go to one place to access information about all of their options, including a map of publicly funded pre-K sites and information on how to enroll. And so Baltimore City has a real opportunity to expand access to high-quality early learning programs. These investments are not only important for kindergarten readiness, but as you've heard from all the other panelists, strengthening our local economy and making Baltimore a place where families can thrive. We also know that early learning is a continuum, and progress in kindergarten readiness depends on strengthening the full prenatal to 5 system. As the city looks ahead, there are several important opportunities for investment. One is creating a local subsidy similar to what Montgomery County has done to help families afford childcare. Early education only benefits children when families can actually afford it, and that includes the cost of wraparound care outside the 6.5-hour pre-K day. The city should also continue working with state partners to sustain blueprint investments in pre-K and ensure those promises are kept. And at the same time, we must continue investing in our childcare providers, the workforce behind the workforce, through training, technical assistance, and fair compensation. Enrollment should be treated as an all-hands-on-deck citywide responsibility. Family-facing city agencies and local leaders should be equipped to help families understand their options and connect them to programs. And finally, Baltimore should define a long-term vision for early care and education. If the city wants to move towards a stronger mixed delivery system and a true universal model for 3s and 4s, we need a clear roadmap for the funding, infrastructure, and partnerships required to get there. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad you talked about, again, the options that are available for families, whether we're talking about those publicly funded seats, whether they're in schools or in other providers, but also, as you mentioned, the need, if we're going to expand pre-K, right, it's going to require an investment. And not only mentioning what we do on the public side, but also the role that philanthropic investment is made. So I appreciate you connecting some of those dots for us. At this point, we're going to shift to Melissa Broom, Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs for the Baltimore City Public School System. So again, thank you for being here, such a critical part of this puzzle.
Good afternoon. I'm actually going to turn it over to our Director of Early Learning at City Schools, Ms. Crystal Francis.
Good afternoon, members of City Council, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all today about the state of early learning in Baltimore City Schools. My name is Crystal Francis, and I am the Executive Director of Early Learning, and I'm honored to share the progress, the impact, and the challenges facing our youngest learners and their families. This work supports children from birth to age 5 and is foundational to the future of our city and our school system. Okay. Baltimore City Schools' early learning vision is centered on providing inclusive, developmentally appropriate, play-based learning environments that honor the ways young children grow and develop. Our classrooms are designed intentionally. They are hands-on, language-rich, emotionally nurturing, and grounded in strong early learning best practices. We believe that learning happens through exploration, conversation, movement, and most importantly, play, because these are the natural pathways through which young children make sense of the world. One of the strongest expressions of this vision is our Judy Centers. Baltimore City has expanded its network from 14 to 17 Judy Centers this year. That is the most in the state of Maryland, allowing us to reach more families and more neighborhoods with comprehensive early childhood supports. These centers serve as a one-stop shop where families can access high-quality playgroups, developmental screenings, adult education, parenting classes, case management, and referral to our local partners. Here we have our most recent kindergarten readiness scores, and as you will see, our City Schools pre-K students continue to outperform their peers in other prior care settings, and we are continuing to work toward reaching the goal with all of our other peers within the state of Maryland. The impact of early childhood education is profound, and the data is clear. High-quality early learning improves children's school readiness, academic performance, and social-emotional skills. But just as importantly, it contributes to stronger long-term economic and community outcomes. Children who participate in strong early childhood programs experience higher lifetime earnings and greater workforce stability. Communities save significantly over time in reducing public spending on criminal justice involvement, social services, and remediation. So investing early really does create opportunities for generational mobility, especially for our low-income families. To support this vision, we equip our educators with ongoing professional development so that every classroom is safe, stable, and emotionally responsive learning environment. Our instructional approach of pre-K is anchored by high-quality curriculum supported through a 3-year-long professional learning arc. At the heart of this framework is talk, write, count, play, strong pillars that build early literacy, early numeracy, expressive language, and problem solving. These pillars ensure that instruction remains developmentally appropriate, culturally responsive, and joyful for our youngest learners. Supporting our families is also a critical part of the work. We recognize that our families face a range of challenges that can affect a child's development and their readiness for school. To meet these needs, we offer a combination of online and in-person resources to meet families where they are. Our topics include pre-K enrollment guidance, potty training, toddler self-care, managing screen time, which is a really big one right now, and supporting children with autism, understanding developmental milestones. These sessions are designed to empower our caregivers with both knowledge and competence, ensuring that learning continues at home in developmentally supportive ways. Under the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, Baltimore City is leading the state in expanding access to early childhood education. The Accountability and Implementation Board, or AIB, officially recognized Baltimore City as the first LEA in Maryland to secure enough 4-year-old seats for all families who wish to enroll. This is an extraordinary milestone and reflects years of state system-wide planning, investment, and coordination that began as early as 2008 with the vision for full-day pre-K at city schools. A major part of this progress comes from our mixed delivery pre-K system. Today, Baltimore City Schools offers approximately 4,100 pre-K seats for 4-year-olds, serving 98% of eligible Tier 1 families who seek enrollment. In addition, we collaborate with our community-based private providers to offer roughly 500 mixed delivery seats for 3 and 4-year-olds. The system gives meaningful choice among high-quality public and private settings. We host quarterly meetings with our private providers, share enrollment processes and resources, and work toward alignment in our high-quality practices. Together with our partners like the Early Childhood Advisory Council or the ECAC, we are building a coordinated early learning ecosystem that benefits both families and providers. Our enrollment infrastructure continues to improve as well. This is our 3rd year of operating a centralized and coordinated pre-K enrollment system. This year, we extended the pre-K and kindergarten enrollment window from 45 to 61 days. That change gives families more time, reduces bottlenecks, and ensures a smoother start to the school year. Within 3 weeks, we have received 1,100 applications, representing 89% of last year's total online applications, demonstrating really strong ongoing demand for early learning in Baltimore City. In closing, Baltimore City Schools has built one of the strongest early learning systems within our state, and one that is expanding access, improving quality, and working collaboratively across sectors. We are really proud of our progress, mindful of our challenges, and deeply committing to ensuring that every child in Baltimore enters kindergarten ready to learn, grow, and thrive. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's truly exciting to see the progress that Baltimore City Schools has made as it relates to pre-K. Again, something we talked about for years, so glad to see it moving in that direction. And as we talk about the progress of city schools, we can't talk about the progress of city schools without talking about the hardworking teachers every day who show up to teach our young people. And I do see Diamond Tate Brown from the Baltimore Teachers Union here with us. So please feel free to come forward, and then we'll shift toward having some questions and comments from the committee members. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm Diamond Tate Brown, president of the Baltimore Teachers Union, and I'm here to speak on behalf of our pre-K educators. I also want to give a big shout out to Head Start. That's where I started my career, at St. Veronica's Head Start. And I was a family services coordinator, and I agree that they should be paid more. I actually think that all workers should be paid fairly, but I'm kind of biased as a labor leader. I digress. So, some of the things that our pre-kindergarten teachers are saying that they need to make working conditions better for them and learning conditions better for our students, they've communicated several things to me. I'm going to highlight 4. One of the things that Dr. Francis mentioned was that the classrooms in Baltimore City are designed intentionally. Well, a lot of times these classrooms are being designed by the pre-K teacher to get accreditation. So our pre-K teachers are asking for a $3,500 stipend upon completion of the accreditation or re-accreditation process, because they're doing this work in addition to instruction. And the accreditation process includes things like lesson plans, cultural diversity. Frog Street is all duplicative work. We have things like Frog Street, which is embedded in cultural diversity, but they're still being asked to input information in both. And also, they're saying that they have spent a lot of money to make their classrooms presentable, because that is a part of accreditation. And they have to get things like curtains, they have to fix the drawers, they have to make it safe. And so they want to be compensated for this work. A part of retaining and recruiting is to make sure that the frontline staff have the supports they need when we're asking them to pull off these monumental feats. One of the things that we have in Baltimore City are Judy Centers, and they're operating very well. And one of the things that the Judy Centers do is gradual entry. Well, our pre-K teachers are asking that happen all across city schools. For those of you that may not know, gradual entry is like when half of the kids come in the first half of the day, the other come in the second half, or they come on a Monday, the rest come Tuesday, everybody's together on Wednesday. Another thing that the pre-kindergarten teachers are asking for is that 5 of the systemic professional development days that we already have built into our contract are the pre-K supervisors and coordinators have input to that planning, and that the sessions consist of discipline-specific presentations on professional topics, policies and procedures, and allow for the exchange of information between and among pre-kindergarten teachers. We also mentioned potty training. Well, our pre-kindergarten teachers are asking for toileting and cleaning materials, including clothes for changing, because we do ask our parents to bring in these materials, and they do a great job, but sometimes they forget, and sometimes there are mishaps that just are beyond what the clothes that were brought in can capture. So they're asking for more resources. And so I'll end there. I've communicated to Councilman Bullock the breadth of what our pre-kindergarten staff is asking for. Oh, one more thing they told me to communicate. They need a pre-K paraeducator in every classroom. And it's important that it's a pre-K paraeducator. We have a lot of paraeducators in Baltimore City Public Schools. It could be a general para, it could be an ESOL para, it could be an early literacy tutor. They're saying they need it to be someone with the job title of pre-K para. The reason why this is so important is that pre-K paras are restricted by Title I funds to only be able to give their services to the pre-K classroom. So in order to keep that 10-to-1 ratio, they need the pre-K classroom para in the classroom. If it's not a pre-K para, what happens is that para may be asked to substitute, that para can substitute, and because paraeducators get paid such low wages, that para will take the opportunity to substitute to supplement their wages, and now we have a classroom that doesn't have a 10-to-1 ratio. I'll end there. Have a great day.
Thank you for the testimony. Again, it shows that you started off in Head Start and early learning as well, because you have a great understanding of it, but also just thank you for sharing some of the concerns of our educators. And even I see our providers also nodding along with many of the things that you mentioned. So again, appreciate you being here and speaking on behalf of our educators. Much appreciated. All right, so with that, I will go on to any questions, comments from members of the committee. We'll start with you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for, again, organizing a really thoughtful panel. Big shout out also to Shamoya Gardner in the back for all the leadership and work that went into this as well. Ms. Peaks, I want to just ask a question of you, and I really appreciate you lifting up the national context and just the irony of the President of the United States, who campaigned on America First and yet is ripping apart our social safety net, is divesting from things like Head Start, is scapegoating Somali childcare providers, and is embroiled in war in Iran. But I digress. I did want to ask, specifically, you mentioned Boston as a best-in-class example of the mixed delivery model. I grew up in Western Massachusetts, went to public high school in Mass. Massachusetts has made major investments in their public education system, and it has paid off. And while I don't always love the comparison between Boston and Baltimore, because there are some really important differences, I am curious what they're doing in terms of the mixed delivery and specifically how they've been able to build effective partnerships that we could learn from.
Yeah, of course. I think one first step Baltimore's already done is the landscape analysis of understanding where all of your 3 and 4-year-olds are located in the city. And then I think it's also making sure that you have the diversity of settings at the table. So Boston has kind of a committee, a governing committee that's helped with the rollout of their UPK, and they have members from every setting. So they have independent schools at the table, they have childcare providers, and when they were really thinking about mixed delivery, they were focused on like private providers, but then they realized during implementation that they weren't actually capturing home-based providers. So they made sure that home-based providers were at the table, and then they also have funding specifically for home-based providers to get up to quality and to get the supports that they need to implement. So they have a citywide curriculum, and they have training specifically for home-based providers to make sure that not only are the settings appropriate, but they're also educated on how to implement the curriculum that's being used across the city. So I think it's making standards very clear and then also differentiating the support that various settings need.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other members of the committee, any questions anyone has? Okay, so I'll start with Vice President and then go to Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, thank all of you for the work that you do for our young people. I have 2 questions. My first one is, okay, so we have a very diverse city. It's reflective of, we had our council member that emphasized training for ICE for our young people. Our Head Start facilities are in different areas throughout our city. In areas of need. I'm very familiar right now with St. Vincent de Paul and just really they've been in Park Heights, that's one section for at least 20 or more years. And now they're taking another step in buying their buildings, which is important. Very good track record. No problem with that, but it is an area that is reflective of different cultures. That particular area has a very strong Caribbean group and throughout Park Heights, really, and we have a growing Latino population. A lot of that diversity is reflected in our Head Start facilities, working with that partnership of strong nonprofits. And I guess if anyone can share any specific strategies that you have in place or will continue to implement, or anything new that's going to be culturally responsive for our early learning programs. Anyone can take a charge at that. To give us some strategies that you are kind of working on now. I know the Center for American Progress you had called out and specifically said that you're going to target African. Just give me some ideas of what kind of strategies you're going to do for that, or just our general diverse population these Head Starts are in areas of need. Give us some little detailed strategies that you already are implementing that has been successful, and you want to continue that.
Well, I can start with responding to just being aware of our community needs assessment and where families are located and being able to respond. Specifically, we have a few pockets under Catholic Charities where we have a growing Hispanic population. So trying to attract staff that are bilingual providing training for existing staff that may not be bilingual so that they can respond and better culturally respond to the children and families in the programs that we enroll. That is one way. Providing cultural diverse trainings and workshops for the families that we do enroll so that there is, we can kind of settle the distrust, because that is a thing, so that they can trust staff, they can understand that we are partners in the development of their child's growth. We have families that don't want to enroll because of the climate that we are facing. So we offer workshops and trainings for families that may not be enrolled, but just to educate them on what is happening so that they can pursue possibly enrolling their child in the program, and just understanding what Head Start is about and what we do. And, you know, we partner with this local school systems and the schools that are in those neighborhoods, so we can go there, we can provide workshops and trainings together. So those are just a few strategies that we kind of implement.
Thank you, and that leads into my second question. If there's anyone else that want to
Yes, I was also going to
Yes.
add, so we also provide culturally responsive workshops for our families. But then we also, over a year ago, we worked with all of our staff at all of our Head Starts around Know Your Rights, to work with our staff and our in both our Head Starts, so that if families did come in and had questions, because we know ICE, so that they would be able to share with the families to know their rights. And we also made sure that we put up around the Head Starts what was public and what was private, so that no ICE could come into certain areas. We made sure that all of the staff were aware of that. We made sure that we use culturally responsive language. And we have all of those trainings for our staff as well as for our families. We make sure that the material that we use is culturally responsive. So we make sure that we have all of that available, because we do have a very diverse population within our Head Starts.
And just the second question that leads into, some of you have already kind of answered it, as far as resources. Now, we just heard from our one of our union representatives and some of the needs of in our local schools and in some of these areas. What kind of, and some of those resources are strong professional development and curriculum improvements, improvements in the facility for that surrounding. Could I have some of you respond to that?
Councilwoman, I'd like to respond. So
Okay.
I would like to say a little bit about the built-in diversity, or the reflecting and being responsive to the communities. Part of it's built into the Head Start model. You're supposed to reflect the community you serve. So if a child has a different home language, it should appear in the classroom, it should appear in the hallways. Also, part of the Head Start model is that parents have a voice, and they're part of the governance. And what you have when you have parents in governance, you start realizing, like, if you had an event that was supposed to happen here, if there's been an ICE raid there, parents are going to be the first ones to say, we don't want to go there. And so, say St. Vincent de Paul, we're one of the we're the server of the largest server or collection of a cohort of second dual language learners. We serve the biggest group of Latino families in Head Start, of the Head Starts. And so that's something that we have to deal with all the time. It manifests as changing where our event locations are, changing how we publicize. We've done the private, can't come beyond this door. We've done the Know Your Rights. We've created the little you know, who to let in, what the subpoena needs to look like, X, Y, and Z, right, before they can come into a door. We've done that for all our FSCs. We're constantly debriefing. We're meeting with Latino network providers and other folk to figure out best ways to secure our parents. But then it also turns into a thing like we've been recently displaced. And that is one of our 2 sites that serve this community, which is a third of our enrollment. When we look for a new location, we're looking to stay in that neighborhood. We're looking to continue to serve those people. And one of the things that no one said, well, we said it, but I don't think we emphasized it. Head Start, 100% of the families, our target is 100, sometimes it comes to 80 to 95%. Those are tier 1, below tier 1. They're 100% at or below the federal poverty level. So that's already, like, the tier 1 is 300%. We are dealing with the neediest of the population. And literally, I think when you include voice, it's very easy to forget their perspective, but that's the beauty of including voice. And that's what the ECAC does, because we can go ahead and always talk about the school system. It's easy. And then, all right, add Head Start. They're another big dog in the race. Put them in there. But when you have an ECAC, then you go, oh, informal, home-based, private, non-private. You start thinking of all the different people and the private providers who are getting in on it, who can use that subsidized slot to create access for other kids who wouldn't have access. It's just very interesting, and it's opened up a lot. And I think there's a lot that's built into the Head Start model that forces us to listen to the community, forces us to innovate all the time, because parents are part of us.
Thank you. That's good information.
Vice President
Yes.
Milton, just thank you for that very insightful question, and thank you for the very enlightening answer, especially given the context we find ourselves in.
Thank you. I'll stop there.
Oh, absolutely. And I see Councilman Jones, then we'll go to Councilman Gray, and anyone over here? Okay, good.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess anyone can answer this question, but I know the issue was kind of highlighted in Baltimore City Head Start presentation, and also the Youth Fund mentioned it. But one common theme I hear across everyone's presentation is the importance of expanding like our system and the opportunities that we have available. One concern I do have is during the presentation, you all mentioned the challenges of making sure that we provide adequate wages and benefits for the employees there. Just want to hear, my concern is if we're going to expand the system, let's not expand on a broken system. You know, one that actually also addresses the current needs that we see within this system. So I guess my question is there a plan, or what does the plan look like to ensure that we're paying the people who are doing the work, this critically important work, the correct wages and benefits that they do deserve? Because also throughout the presentation, I hear how critical it is that towards our children's development during these years. These are the most important years during their development, but at the same time, we're not willing to pay the people doing that even comparable to what we're paying out like regular school teachers in first grade and K through 12 teachers. And I already feel like they're being underpaid. So if you're telling me we're paying people lower than the underpaid people, I'm scared to figure out or to find out what those wages are. But just want to hear is there a plan in order to address this? Because as we expand on the system, we're just going to be creating more low-wage jobs and opportunities, and that isn't a system that I think benefits us as a whole. So is there a plan or anything, or what can be done, or what are the recommendations? Thank you.
Okay. I think people are doing different things. I know within the Head Start model, there are folks that have engaged in slot reductions. And that was a thing that it happened on the federal level. It happened because of different things with enrollment and whatnot coming out of COVID, but folk opted to reduce slots so that they could, and they turned that back into salaries. It's a strategy because federally we have a requirement to pay a certain level, which is on par with the school system, but a reality is that the dollars don't stretch. So that was a strategy. That's a strategy my program employed. A second strategy was turning to the state pre-K program to help supplement some of that. It's very interesting because as Shannon intimated, so the Head Start program is highly regulated. These folk are credentialed, highly regulated, observed left and right, up and down. There's another level once you start participating in the pre-K program, another level of observation, another level of requirement. They all come with dollars to spend, because you tend to have to pay to participate. You pay to play, you pay to bring yourself up to a level that's the only level that's recognized. And so that's its own difficulty, but that's another strategy Head Starts have done to try to braid funding to leverage. Me personally, I'm very interested in pre-K. I see it as one of the only ways to impact the wages of teachers. If I don't want to stay a place that employs the working poor, I need to find another way to braid some funding and to infuse some money into the model. And literally, those are the two places we're looking. Parents ask the same question, but that's why they need the child care scholarship.
I completely understand, and I bring it up not necessarily looking to highlight a problem, but here to say I want to be a partner in helping to address this issue. If it isn't a plan around it, and how do we highlight it and make sure it's addressed and it's on everyone's mind as we move forward?
No, thank you for asking that question. Paying our educators their worth is truly important, because we know that there are the workforce behind the workforce, and they have families to take care of themselves as well. So again, much appreciated. Councilman Gray.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone for being here today. I guess what I seem to understand is just a simple concept. Like, we've heard that Baltimore is close to meeting the blueprint requirements for low-income 4-year-olds, but we're also hearing that families still can't find care. Providers are struggling. Hundreds of children are still entering kindergarten without any early learning experience. So my questions kind of center on like whether we're building a system that works in practice, or do we have one that we're just putting on paper just to send out for headlines. And so in that vein, I always love to understand the issue at hand instead of just making assumptions. And so I want to start first with Baltimore City Public Schools. City schools have said that we've had enough seats for Tier 1 4-year-olds. And I've seen this from multiple presenters today, that we have the room. Could you really go into why these seats are still going unfilled? And in going into that, what are the top barriers that you're seeing from families?
Sure. Thank you for that question. I think there are a number of things that we see with families. One, schools are for 6.5 hours, and most of our jobs are like 8 hours. So before and after care actually really does end up becoming a barrier for a lot of our families. We have a particular number of seats at each individual school. And so while families do have the ability to select more than one school, in our centralized enrollment system, they have the ability to choose up to 3 schools. There are some families who will only pick and choose one school. And then if that one school is full, then they are not taking advantage of being able to move to different locations. So again, every year we tend to have some seats that go unfilled, but it's not that we don't have the seats available. It's really about trying to support families with matching them and showing them that there are other schools that they may not have heard of or they may not be thinking about that also have high quality programs. Now with mixed delivery, there are other opportunities for families to be able to find a setting that may meet their need in a different way. If Head Start is able to offer before care hours and after care hours, and the City Schools program is not able to do that, we are happy for families to find themselves in whatever makes sense for them. It's really first just about them knowing what is available, and then really helping them to find the setting that makes the most sense for their life.
Thank you for the answer. It seems like anecdotally a lot of people want to send their kids to like 3 or 4 schools across the city. And we have just with my office, my staff looking at the numbers, we have certain schools in my district that for a variety of reasons, whether it's location, we have one school that has maybe 15 kids enrolled in pre-K. And when you look at it, it's because literally everything around it is apartments, right? And so you have transient lifestyles that are going in and out because of no particular instance of their own, or sometimes you bring a kid there that's 8, that's no longer 4. And so like we're missing the mark on that. And sometimes I feel like that needs to be highlighted, not just from, city schools, but as council people, everyone has to get together and say, hey, we have seats here at this school. And your child will be okay. And so my second question, thank you. My second question it goes towards the state, MSDE. So you mentioned a centralized enrollment system. How will that actually solve the issue of the empty seats and families not knowing where to go?
Thank you for that question. As recipients of the PDG Birth to 5 grant, that is one of the systems that we are working on building out this year. And what we're planning on what the development will be is find a program directory that expands beyond just childcare. It will expand into pre-K, both in public and in private settings, fully encompassing our mixed delivery system. and allowing for parents to, one, learn about quality, two, be able to identify what is available in their area, and to Crystal's point, what would actually meet their needs. Is it about a Head Start family? Is it about a family who actually sits on Tier 2 and is able to find enrollment, available enrollment, whether it's in LEAs or in our private settings, that is real time and meets families' real needs, whether that's before and after care with 6.5 hours of educational programming in between, or being able to identify additional support systems. So it will consider it an enrollment hub where families will be able to learn about program options, also be able to identify what their potential family share could be in regards to the implementation of sliding scale, and then actually be able to message and enroll within programs, kind of leaving out that additional step, which could require families to actually have to get themselves transported to a program to actually apply, to find out that there might not be slots available. So to really make it as easy and a comprehensive one-stop shop for families to be able to choose quality and enroll their children. Expanding beyond, though, mixed delivery in 3- and 4-year-olds, it also, though, looks at the ability for families who have infants and toddlers also, right? President Cohen, you spoke of the fact that you had one child who aged out of that one teacher's classroom, and now you have your younger child there, right? Our families have multiple children with multiple needs. It is far more convenient, particularly for our working families, to be able to bring all of their children who are not in kindergarten yet into one place, or at least into one community, so that way it's an ease for the parents. So this pre-K enrollment system will support not just pre-K, but also will be able to help full family support in regards to finding the care that they need.
Okay, and for that, just a follow-up and then just a statement, so sorry. I know this is in my committee, so. Are we measuring the success by the number of seats created or the number of children actually enrolled in attending?
I think we're trying to do both. I think we are trying to do community needs assessments that are trying to identify where our families are and our children are so that we can build the capacity. But we're also trying to monitor our program's enrollment closely to ensure that the families that are being enrolled and the children that are taking those seats are actually becoming, or are successful, the child outcomes are successful. We mentioned the expanded use of class. We currently use class in our Head Start programs, which are amazing models for programs that have really focused on child-teacher outcomes and student outcomes as it relates to that. And we are looking at how it is that we'll be able to expand that across our entire mixed delivery system to be able to get a much closer viewpoint in regards to, as seats are being filled, as enrollment needs are being identified, as capacity is being built in our quality programs, that the teachers that are leading the course in those classrooms are actually supporting child and family outcomes the way that we would like to see them.
Thank you, I really appreciate that answer. I think one of the things that should come out of this is for City Council, any state folks to listen, we all have to get on board, and I think that's something that was talked about at the ECAC. We all have to get on board to come up with some type of way to ensure that we're feeding our kids literally, but also making sure that they have access to all of the advantages that our system provides. Because at this current rate, especially when we talk about kids that aren't 4 or 5, we're saying newborns, and you have to send your kid to daycare at $700, $800, $900 a month. Once you start paying that, you get used to it. And so when you then apply and you want to go to said school, you don't get into said school, you look at the price of Roland Park, you look at the price of Calvert School, $22,000, $23,000. I've been doing that already. As a matter of fact, that may be cheaper than what I'm actually paying for my kid to be in daycare. And so I'm afraid that a lot of the kids that we could actually benefit from, not only from knowledge, but just from kids from different incomes, they're not going to public schools and not going to a lot of these other, they're not entering Head Start because parents now have the option and they're used to paying a certain amount that now they want, quote unquote, the best. And we don't know, based on, scores, whether they are actually getting the best. But they're paying for it because of what we hear on TV and everything else that goes on about our public school system. So I'll get off my soapbox, but I just want to say, I think this is something that we all have to come together as city, state leaders, and pull on the purse strings. Hopefully, in another 3 years, when we have a new president, of the next president, to figure out a way that we have to be really creative to not only make sure that pre-K and kindergarten is okay, but we make sure that families have a sustainable way to pay for childcare, because as someone who's doing so right now, it is insane. But also someone who went to Head Start, I know all of the great activities and the valuable things that I learned. So thank you.
Thank you for the very thoughtful and probing questions. And I think it is also demonstrative of the fact that many of us are parents and we have someone who's going through their journey right now. So again, this is not just academic or abstract to us, this is real life. So thank you for lifting it up. Vice Chair Parker, you saw the question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for everybody with us today for this continued conversation. I have a few questions. I wanted to pick up where Councilperson Jones is asking, just to point out that one of the challenges around salaries with public pre-K expansion is that the extra dollars and the higher salary requirements are specific to the public pre-K teacher. And so we mentioned before that a number of our private providers are struggling without having the 3-year-olds and the 4-year-olds in the building, because it's more expensive to serve the infants and toddlers, and how important it is to have all those groups together for the well-being of families. But the way state law currently works, we're introducing this tiered compensation system where the center can't say, okay, great, we're getting this influx of funds for these public pre-K seats, the 4-year-olds, but I can't use those funds to help make sure all of my teachers from infants all the way up are paid in an equitable or fair way. And so just to name that as one of the challenges, I don't need a response, but just it's just tricky in that regard. To Olatunde, all of you all can weigh in on all these questions, but one of the challenges of having such a great panel in front of us. But Olatunde, you mentioned one of the challenges of the public pre-K is around the subsidy amount. We talked about hours of operation too, which is part of it. But part of it's the amount and part of it's eligibility. Remind us currently, and not that our state partners can't say this too, remind us what the public pre-K subsidy amount per student is. I know it's changing year over year, but what is it for the next school year?
Nakia, I think you might be able to help me. It's around
It's $19,950 per slot or per child.
Great.
Yes.
Nakia, what's the sliding? Because that's the full, if you get fully supported.
That's the full, yes.
That's the full, yeah. No, I understand above 300%, it's less than that. 300% for a family of 4 right now, I think, doing math, is around $96,000 household income. Is that where that line is? Does that sound right to the providers who work with that number all the time?
See, I only deal with 100%, and that's around 30 or 40,000. That might be right.
What's 100%?
Around 30-something thousand.
Yeah, so right, I think, yeah. Okay, very good. The amount and that. So just wanted to name those as part of the challenge. And it gets to what Councilperson Gray was asking about too, is, and you all as well, that there's this line above which it makes it harder, and especially childcare centers, which may have a smaller percentage of students who are under that 300% level, who might want to participate in public pre-K. All of a sudden the math gets tricky to make that leap, even if it's something they want to do, because they, if 100% of your students qualify, okay, great, that's simple. If this year 30% do, maybe next year only 25%, maybe the year after 40%, because you just can't predict, it makes it hard to make that leap into the model that we want to encourage people in. To Rudy, and I put Roger on the spot last time. I don't know if he told you this, so but hopefully he did tell you, so not only you had some heads up. The slide mentioned that in public pre-K seats, I think for 4-year-olds, I think specifically in the city, we'd gone from 221 seats to 515 over a certain period of time, which is great. The question I'd ask Roger, and this goes back, I think, to one of my colleagues' questions too, is some of those seats converted from existing seats, whether it's Head Start or just a normal private provider seats, into a public pre-K seat, which is important because that comes with all the benefits that we know about. But we also know, as the Council President mentioned, we're losing seats, we're losing providers too. So of that increase from 221 to 515, do we know how many of those were genuinely new seats that didn't exist before, or versus how many of them were converted seats?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we don't have exact data that tells us that. Perhaps MSD does, but I think the way to think about it is it's taking seats that families had to fund privately and moving them into the public system where now they're subsidized, and they're also moving into, when they move into the public system, families can know they're meeting this certain barrier of quality. You know, Ms. Ivory talked about the things that she's had to do at her program when she became a publicly funded pre-K site in terms of accreditation, staff credentials, and you also know that you know, you mentioned the issue of disparity, right, between infant toddlers and pre-K, but it also does allow the teacher and assistant teacher in that classroom to be paid more. So I think you're thinking about taking seats from private and moving in them into a public system for families. So don't have exact data on like how that compares to like, privately funded seats, but that's how I would say I would think about it.
Sure. No, and I appreciate there's no denial that is real progress, right? But in as much as we are trying to reach broader coverage of all 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds in the city, being able to create new seats is really important alongside being able to create the best quality new seats, right? The best quality seats that we have. You had mentioned in one of your recommendations a subsidy from Montgomery County, I think for before and after care possibly. Can you say more? What does that subsidy look like? How's it funded? I realize it's locally funded and that, you know, money's always tight, but tell us about Montgomery County.
Yeah, and I know this was also in the ECAC's recommendations as well. So if Olatunde wants to speak to this too, but in Montgomery County, they've done a lot to invest in their early care and education. And one thing that they've created is a local subsidy. It's called, they have two, I believe. I'm not an expert on it, but they have, it's called Working Parents Assistance and then EchoCare. So, you know, it's supplemental to the state's Child Care Scholarship Program. And as we look at, you know, supporting families who, you know, there is a Child Care Scholarship freeze. There's also families who, I think as Olatunde mentioned, are right on that line where, you know, maybe they don't qualify, but it's still really, really hard for them to afford care. You know, Crystal mentioned the wraparound care being an issue. You know, you can send your kid for a 6.5-hour day, but if you can't afford aftercare, how are you picking them up at 2:30? It's much easier to just maybe send them to somewhere that's more informal because, you know, you can't manage that wraparound. So you know, I think that's a model we could look to think about how we can kind of support the whole ecosystem around what is also needed to support expanded 3 and 4s, but strengthening kind of the whole prenatal to 5 system.
Great, thank you. I have others if the chair allows.
How many more? Because you want to vote, right?
I do. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Casey mentioned this in her presentation. Thank you so much for being with us in particular. One of the challenges, all the challenges around federal funding, and we talked about it with Head Start and other forms. For our state friends, remind us with the Child Care Scholarship Program. I know we've had funding issues with that because the program expanded and grew so much, which is a great thing, but then making sure we have the resources fine on the state side. How much of the Child Care Scholarship Program is paid for with federal funds versus state funds? What's that breakdown? I'm trying to get a sense of our exposure to the vicissitudes of Washington as it relates to early childhood. And that could be a follow-up.
If that could be a follow-up.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
want to try to give you the right percentage.
Yeah, no, I just really appreciate that because I know the state has stepped up significantly in recent years, but it'd be good to know what that has left us in terms of exposure there. My final question then, thank you, Mr. Chair. We talked about this a little bit last time, but then it seemed more appropriate to come up today because I knew we were going to spend more time talking about Head Start and other things. It has to do with the data that we're tracking for, I mean, we talk about student achievement, we're talking about our youngest learners, but there still is data and it's still important without putting too much pressure on them. So with KRA's kindergarten readiness, if I'm recalling our previous conversation correctly, the city of Baltimore still uses that, but the state of Maryland has moved away from KRAs. Can you just speak to, is there a unified way that we're trying to assess kindergarten readiness moving forward that's consistent between the state and the city, and just help us understand that a little bit?
Yes, so last year there was no official KRA. The state was kind of in between choosing and selecting a new assessment. Our CEO, Dr. Santelises, of course, wants to always ensure that we are keeping up with our readiness scores for our students. So Baltimore City implemented KRA last year independently. So last year we were the only ones who did it for our students. This year there is a new assessment that all of the LEAs in the city did. So the scores that you're seeing now are based on the brand new KRA that was rolled out. So everyone in the state has done that one.
Great, thank you. And then with Head Start, similarly, we had some Head Start data around Excels last time, and the Excel scores were much lower for Head Start than I expected, because I know a lot of the providers, and I know how high the standards are in general from the federal government, and how hard our local Head Start operations are working. I understand that Head Start programs evaluated by the federal class system is a kind of separate assessment. Is there a pathway to align the class system of assessments with whether it's Excels or something else specific to Maryland, so that Head Start programs aren't being penalized or misunderstood in our current program?
Well, we, do you want to go first?
Well, I was going to say, I think the statistics are delayed. There are way more level 5s and level 4s from the Head Start than the current data would show.
Yes.
Because I know when it went out.
Correct.
I think they had a total of 1, and I have 5 alone.
Yes.
Just my site. So
Yes.
it's just delayed. And you know,
Yeah.
you get your certification when you get it. And it was one thing we learned from doing the landscape analysis. It's very hard to find all the data we need. We really had to go digging and searching. And that's one of the things, we definitely want some more investment in streamlining to be able to track and trace our kids, but the numbers are lower. They're higher than what you see. Those are old statistics.
And I think that one of the things to talk about ratings, the Head Start programs actually, for the majority of the part, do very well in Maryland's quality rating and improvement system, specifically because of the performance standards and the guidelines and the requirements that they already have to implement in their programs. And one of the things that we have done and are continuing to do is look more at a streamlined system within our quality rating and improvement system in Excels. Currently, right now, we accept that we not only accept, we are happy that we can have Head Start class data to actually be supportive of our current Head Start programs ratings in Maryland Excels. It allows for us to not have to max out capacity with assessors, and most importantly, it allows for us to be able to acknowledge and collaborate with our Head Start programs to be able to see the scores as well as the summary and feedback that are being provided to their teachers in our programs throughout the state. So we are looking at additional ways to be able to reduce duplication, but most importantly, they're already doing a great job with bringing class and being that aware of the importance of teacher-child interactions. And so we're looking at how we can embrace that more.
Can I say one more thing?
Please.
The numbers are also muted because although quality exists to participate, you were funneled through a certain system. So there are many Head Start classrooms that are on a certain level, but you're funneled through the system. It's an incredible administrative oversight and load. Those who you can find very easily among the Head Starts, those who are able to get their sites at level 5 and maintain level 5 have a dedicated person working at it. So the systems exist, but you have to submit the paperwork all the time. You have to be going behind the staff. It's a lot, it's a huge administrative burden. And then to get to 5, you have to be 5 in accreditation. There's $1 to that. You're always gonna have to go buy something and put it in your environment. So there's reasons people don't participate. It's that pay to play, and Head Start is well equipped to do it, and the only reason they won't, it's the pay to play. You might not have the personnel, someone to dedicate to just handle paperwork so that you can prove your quality. And that's what's happening. People have trouble proving what already exists. There's quality outside of the known systems.
And thank you for those answers that speak to some of the details around quality, right? It could be very challenging, but I will say, Vice Chair, it's apparent by your questions that you have been a provider because you have a lot of detail there. So I'll go to Councilman Torrance, then we'll finish up with a statement from Council Vice President Middleton. Councilman Torrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll keep mine brief. So first comment, thank you for all that you do. It is an ecosystem that is challenging because it is the workforce for the workforce. And this is something that has always been something I always asked for when I was at city schools, and this is for city schools. Have we looked at using Build to Learn dollars in our elementary schools to build infrastructure so that we can have some of these programs actually integrated into our buildings? Because if we're seeing that the issue is transportation, because I'm gonna tell you the truth, my own pre-K class in my neighborhood was filled. So I had to make a choice of where I wanted to commute with my young person to go to be in pre-K, recognizing that that is the best way for him to be kindergarten ready, right? So these are the choices that as a middle class family we're making, but I recognize that I'm not gonna be a tier 1. I'm gonna have to wait my turn, but I have to figure out where to go afterwards. I think that if we start thinking about building the infrastructure in our existing dollars and pipelines for money, then we can start having that conversation. I just wanna lift that up because that is where we have dedicated resources for building the infrastructure. And the fact that if we're talking about cost and saving in terms of a physical plant, if I can save on the cost of a physical plant to pay teachers, that is important. That way I have a quality space, but I'm not paying for that space, but I'm now using those dollars that I saved to put into my teachers. Because what I found from looking at the ecosystem, even with the blueprint, a lot of the private people, a lot of the public people, it is hard to create the pipeline to get people the accreditation and the education and still have them show up every day and it not be supported with the finances, because then you shift that either onto yourself or you shift that onto families, and then gets shifted onto the scholarship dollars. My next question is, have we as an ecosystem looked at putting a lot of our centers next to transit-oriented development? I say that as a person who I had a healthcare desert in my district where in Central West Baltimore, I had no clinics. So we had to go out and work with the University of Maryland and others to actually take the vacant target and turn those actual facilities into a healthcare location. So that our seniors can get access to memory care and supportive services, but also residents who needed primary care and just women's health had access in West Baltimore. We're actually exploring this option now for childcare, because just putting it out there, we're looking to do 24-hour childcare in West Baltimore, because I have a need that has always been asked for. Is like, what do we do if I'm a shift work and I work late at night? How do I get that quality? And that is a question I just want to put out there, because I think we need to start thinking about, we have access, but how do we make it readily accessible that it's just automatic? Because if I have one dominant serves over 14 lines of transportation, 14 bus lines in Go Start in Mondawmin Mall. Imagine how many childcare centers we have nearby there. Not that many. So I think we have to start think strategically, how do we connect families in a fragmented transit system to the hubs where we can have campuses of childcare? Just leave me with that note.
Can I just?
Good points and good questions. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Imani. I am one of the co-chairs of the ECAC, and I'm also a child care provider. I think your question is a very good question, but we also have to, and I think one of the things we don't look at a lot is the fact that childcare has a set of regulations that actually are different from school system, and those two are not apples to apples at all. So for us to be able to go into those buildings, it doesn't automatically work real easily, and it takes a lot for a school to then have to shift for whatever we have to do and our requirements. And so that just kind of brings me back to one of the questions about, are we creating systems that don't necessarily give us the full answer? And I really would say part of what we need to do is keep having these hearings, having the meeting after this meeting, figuring out what we need to do. That's what the ECAC is all about. That's why we are doing what we do, because there is no easy solution, but we need to look at how we do what we do, see what is really working, and then make some changes in that from every level, from the federal level to the state level to our local level. So there is no solution in this room today, but there's a lot of work to do to get there.
And Vice President Middleton.
This statement feeds right into this conversation. And I'm sitting here telling myself, God, I am old. I go all the way back. I remember, you remember the Paquin School for girls and some other schools, because back in those days, when a teenager would get pregnant, They couldn't go to a regular school. There had to be specialized schools. Park Heights, again, was one of the areas that had a very high teen pregnancy. There were organizations that helped to guide pregnant teens, and they actually had pre-K classes right in the room because all that works together. And lo and behold, I became a council member 2007, and Park Heights Renaissance kind of was in the move then. The federal funding was kind of taken away, and because of the need in that community, they really worked hard to keep the hippie program, is what it's called. And everything that we're talking about, this program is an excellent program. And then all of the changes that through the years that the Renaissance was going through, new leadership, I give credit to the Family League for helping to finance this program. And it is an excellent program in that community. The council president has been working with me to really kind of take that program to another level. So I think it's a good idea for you to check out because it's really, some of you were mentioning the wraparound services. This program has it. It's a small scale program just for that community. And I've actually have seen the parents and the children grow, and they're ready for kindergarten and the public school system or wherever they decide to go. But it is a track and an example of what is, going on. So I really ask all of you to try to look into and check out that program because the president and I are kind of investing that program into some kind of serious model. It's been a kind of a secret with helping with all the other things that are advancing in Park Heights and being, it's a lot going on there with the racetrack and so on, but it has captured a path to help those young parents, and it's doing everything that a wraparound service is supposed to do. So I'll stop there.
I appreciate those comments. Before I go to Councilman Torrance and President Cohen, there are two people who signed to testify, one in person and one online. Is Melissa Rock still here? Please come forward. I've been watching you throughout this session and seeing your exuberance, so love to hear from you. So please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Melissa Rock. I am a proud resident of District 14, and I am the Birth to 3 project director at Maryland Family Network. You heard from 2 of my colleagues at the January hearing. My project is focused on supporting pregnant individuals in Baltimore City and families with young children. I'm supported by the Zanville and Isabel Krieger Fund to do my work. As you all, I think, know, I'm actually going to talk a bit about brain development. Everyone's heard the various statistics about how much brain development happens in the first 3 years. For young children whose families are experiencing food insecurity, housing instability, or living in violent neighborhoods, the toxic stress of that can disrupt and negatively impact brain development, unless that child has a strong connection to a single adult. So that adult could be a parent, a grandparent, that adult could be a child care provider that they're with every day. And my whole work is focused on trying to make sure that early childhood providers understand sort of that dynamic, and also that families are able to access supports to strengthen their attachment to their children. A lot of times, if you weren't parented with a strong attachment to your parent, it's really hard to know how to do that and to sort of heal those wounds. In Baltimore City, we have a number of programs that do provide that support: child-parent psychotherapy, parent and child interaction therapy, attachment and biobehavioral catch-up. But one thing that we do need more investment in is the early childhood mental health consultation that is done by, there are a number of providers that do it, but the Baltimore City Child Care Resource Center is one of the places that does. And for them, if they could have more support to have these behavioral health professionals to go out to the child care programs and assist both the programs in meeting young children's needs, and also have a look at if there are social emotional needs that child or social emotional supports that the young child needs, they're able to then connect with the parent and try and get services for that child. There's so much to infant and early childhood mental health, and it would be great for us to dig into that more deeply another time. I thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today, and I really am grateful to all of you for all the great work that you do for our city. Thank you.
No, thank you. I'll just say we're grateful to you, again, talking about brain development, talking about mental health. Again, we can't forget about how those two are connected, but also how so many of our communities, the ones we represent, our young people are dealing with trauma and what that means in terms of having that social and emotional support. So again, very, very much appreciated there.
Thank you.
And I know looks like we have Bill Hudson online. And if there's anybody else online, let us know. But go to Mr. Hudson. Is he able to unmute? Mr. Hudson, you can unmute at this time if you want to speak. And also, if there's anybody else online who would like to speak, please let us know, or we'll just go and proceed with the rest of the hearing.
I think maybe we got it working. How about now?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Bullock and members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. My name is Bill Hudson. I'm the Executive Director for the Family Child Care Alliance of Maryland and the Project Director for our Aspire Pre-K program. Since 2020, we've been helping family child care providers, or home-based providers, as has been referenced today, across Maryland join the mixed delivery system. We currently support 97 programs across the state, including several in Baltimore City. Over the last nearly 6 years, we've gained a unique perspective on what it takes to create high-quality pre-K programs in family child care homes. That experience, combined with our extensive research on the impact of public pre-K expansion, has led us to several recommendations for communities looking to expand pre-K seats in a short period of time. I want to share those with you, while protecting the private child care market. First, if you haven't already, we recommend an extensive survey of your providers to find out who, with the right supports, would consider offering publicly funded pre-K. The reason being is those who do not want to participate will be at risk, because future market forces as pre-K expands will reduce their revenue to the point of possibly causing closures. So those are the indicators of the programs you want to keep an eye on. Next, find out what your provider's true enrollment is. Published license data doesn't really equal true capacity, which can be lower. Studies have shown that many child care centers are operating at less than 90% of licensed capacity for reasons that are outside of their control. Next, find out what percentage of families with pre-K age children actually want to send their children to pre-K. For a variety of reasons, not everyone does. You've heard some of that today. And we've already seen some public pre-K seats in the state sit empty because of a mismatch between anticipated demand and reality. Lastly, for those families that do want to send their children to pre-K, ask them what settings they prefer. Again, as you've heard today, many parents assume that school-based pre-K is the only option. publicly funded pre-K and childcare centers and family childcare homes is still a relatively new offering. In family childcare, it's only been around since 2020. So parents may not know they have choices. Knowing real preferences will give you better planning data. I provided a written summary with our brief. I have a full research report coming to you with citations. So thank you for your time. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'll say thank you, Mr. Hudson, for adding your important voice to this conversation. And again, talking about the choices that are available to parents. Really appreciate that. Not seeing anyone else online to testify and no one else in person. Do want to shift then to Councilman Torrance and then have Council President wrap us up. Councilman Torrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to flag for my colleagues that there is a bill that is in Congress right now that will provide work study, federal work study for Head Start. I think that as one thing that we should lift from our own, and this is for MOGR, is that we from the city of Baltimore should send some support for it because that provides direct access to workforce, but also persons who are entering get an opportunity to see a channel that they can go to. Just want to flag that.
No, thank you. Because we talked before about the federal environment, and that's an important piece. So again, much appreciated. Council President, appreciate you hanging out with us for the duration. Have some final words if you like.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate the thoughtfulness of this hearing, and just want to say this is about building the village together. It is going to take all of us, private, public, all of us hand in glove, working together to make this happen. This really is one of those issues where whether you are a provider, whether you are a parent, whether you are a educator, all of us have an interest in supporting our youngest learners. The statistics could not be more clear about cognitive growth and brain development. And when we think about the Baltimore that we all want to build together, this is one of those issues that ties so many of the different threads. Of course, Councilman Jones talked about pay equity and workforce. The Vice President talked about the HIPPY program and how we strengthen our parents and our families. Appreciate Councilman Torrance lifting up that bill in Congress. The Vice Chair with many, many, many insightful questions as both a parent and a provider. And then just the Chairman for holding this hearing and the really robust conversation, all the folks, and again, just want to thank Center for American Progress, for being here with us in Baltimore. We appreciate anytime we can get support. Also lift up Councilman Gray's really good and really direct questions about how we are measuring and how we're thinking about what it means to actually succeed in this space. So just appreciate the team effort, the village. This is a high, high priority, and I hope you can see reflected on this council for all of us, and one that I think we can make true measurable progress on in the next few years. So just thank you.
All right, thank you. And for all the panelists and all the members of the public who came for early childhood education, again, we appreciate the time you spent with us today and your work in this field. So we'll be seeing you around Baltimore. You're dismissed at this point, although our committee still has one more item to attend to. So again, enjoy the rest of your day. We'll pause for about a minute or two as we transition, and we'll get to our final item on the agenda. So thank you so much. All right, so we are pushing right along. We're now approaching the 3 o'clock hour. It's 2:58, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our final item on the agenda, which is Council Bill 250100, Children and Youth Fund. We're going to go to the vote now. So now we are going to vote on our Children and Youth Fund bill. So I do want to provide an opportunity for us to hear from the sponsor of the bill, 2501. Yes, go ahead and give us an update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And really briefly, we've spent a lot of time in committee speaking about this. Thanks again to all of our partners, certainly the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund, the Mayor's Office, Comptroller's Office, Law Department, which has had lots of feedback over the months. For those who weren't able to join us at our last hearing, you'll notice that at DLR's recommendation and my grateful acceptance, they took the lengthy set of amendments and turned it into one amendment that's comprehensive of all the work that's been done by this committee and in collaboration with BCYF and the other stakeholders. And so that's what's going to be before us, will be to make that single amendment, which essentially replaces the bill as it was originally written. The only change that has taken place since the last one was one that came from MOGR, and so really appreciate that. And that was a tweak around the mayoral representation on the board of directors. It had been the director of MOCFS or someone appointed by the director of MOCFS, and this language is someone appointed by the mayor. And so that's the only change since we last gathered 2 weeks ago. And so, yeah, those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And Mr. President still hanging out with us. Have a few words, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to take a quick moment to thank the sponsor for the very diligent work that he's done to address just a complicated bill, and to work closely with the mayor's office, our office, colleagues, the youth fund itself, to engage proactively with many of the grantees, to lean into some of the critiques and really try to get to a product that we can all feel proud of. I remember, and the chair remembers when, and Vice President remembers when former Mayor Jack Young initiated and passed the Children and Youth Fund, and the moment that we were in as a city after the uprising, and just the clear need to invest more into our kids and into our future and our young people. And while the circumstances have changed and Baltimore is in a very different place, we still have a profound need to invest in our kids and our young people. And so it is good to see the collaborative effort to continue the youth fund, to continue to support, to bring the right sets of accountability to bear, and just grateful for, I know it's been a pretty extensive process, but really grateful that we've been able to get here, and appreciate your hard work.
Thank you for that. I do want to note that we have representatives from the Mayor's Office of Government Relations and also the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund. Any commentary at this point from either one of you?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Isaiah Griffith, Mayor's Office of Government Relations. I just want to put on the record, and Councilman Parker already spoke on this, to thank him for his collaboration with the Youth Fund, with him, with us. And like he said, with the amendment, we are favorable with the bill as it is amended to change the designee to be the mayor or his designee, away from the director of MLCFS or the director's designee. But yeah, that's all we have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Braden Hanson. I'm the Vice President of External Affairs. I know we touched on this at the working session last time. The only change, and I know President Lee talked about this earlier, was around the invitation only and those emergency grants. I think the way that this amendment is set up is that would not be possible, if I'm understanding correctly. So I just wanted to vocalize that just before the vote. As for the other amendments, I know President Lee said this as well. We are in favor of the amendments that are proposed, but that is one last change from our part. But we understand people's vote.
Thank you for that. And then any questions from members of the committee? I see Councilman Torrance and then Councilman Ramos, please.
Perfect. I saw the commentary from the last hearing, and I'm just going to be transparent with the council. I'm still uncomfortable with this bill. It does not feel like community in terms of amending this bill in the legislation after talking to the former council president and mayor, but also thinking about the environment that we were in 2020 when this similar emergency happened and we needed to go to one-to-one, and the youth fund provided that actual resource for us. And I don't know what tomorrow begs, but I know what I have today. And at this point, I'm just going to urge my colleagues to either hold this over or I'm going to vote no.
Councilman Ramos, please.
Thank you. I have a question for the sponsor. We, at the end of the last hearing, we, I think that it was clear that there needed to be additional work. It sounds like you did go back to the mayor's office. And I just wanted to understand a little bit about the dialogue around this invite-only piece, because,
got to try to work through, the last set. So what does it say in the bill, just to understand a little bit better, and then in terms of what it's trying to accomplish? Because we heard earlier in the earlier hearing that there are times that other foundations and all of the people, some of the foundations that we rely on do invite-only requests.
Sure. So the bill itself, as amended, simply says that all grant opportunities will be available to all eligible organizations, right? So it's framed from an equity standpoint, that there's no picking of winners and losers, or in this case, picking of winners prior to an open application where all eligible organizations have a chance to say, hey, we have an idea, we have a concept that could meet that need, right? We have a unique situation, unique staff, unique perspective that can that would really benefit from these resources and all the rest. So that's the base assumption there, is that because these are public funds in particular, and because this is an organization which is dedicated to equity and dedicated to making sure that organizations are not left out of opportunities, which has been the primary way that invitation-only funding has worked, not at BCYF, but at these private foundations, right? That has been one of the main tools by which Black and brown-led grassroots organizations that didn't have the relationship, didn't have the knowledge, hadn't gone to school with the program officer, and all those ways that disparity is embedded formally and informally in our systems, the way that has functioned in private foundations has been inherently inequitable. And because BCYF is trying to take that head on, it's really important from my perspective that then that's embedded in, that there's certain things we are not trying to replicate from private foundations. Although it's their money, they can do with what they want. It sounds like a critique. It is a critique. I'm making a critique of them. But when it comes to our public funds and our commitment to equity and our pushing back against it, there's certain practices we don't and we can't afford to carry over. And so that's what I would say about invitation-only funding as it's specific to the public funds that we are putting out into the community for this.
Right, and I appreciate that answer. I was curious around one of the things that Director Lee said earlier today was that there are times when there needs to be maybe bridge funding, or there has to be like some emergency in quotes, urgent situation that is, maybe somebody was waiting for reimbursement and then they're going to get a bridge or whatever. Like I wasn't interpreting the President's Fund to be, hey, I want to do this specific program and I'm only going to work with these specific people. I thought it was more around having that flexibility to be able to say, oh my gosh, we need another 20,000 for after school and it's not here, so maybe put it here. I'm just trying to understand how we account for, I'm all for transparency. I think what's really important is that we're trying to be as transparent as possible, which I think is the right thing to do. I'm just curious about this dynamic of if there is something that comes up, how we are able, with the language that you have, to allow for that flexibility. And maybe we don't call it invite only. I would encourage you not to call it invite only, but it would be something around that kind of flexibility as needed.
Yeah, I've spoken about it directly with President Lee and Brandon and the staff there, as well as in this forum at our previous conversations. I think that capacity already exists within the bill as it's written. What's not in the bill as it's written is that broader invitation only, which isn't an emergency responses and things like that. The way that I would frame it if we were to pass this legislation, the way I would frame it would simply be, listen, we have an emergency fund set aside. We have a standing emergency fund with a standing application set aside for our grantees, specifically to respond to, that's restricted to the eligible organizations would be not by invitation, but would be our existing grantees, right? That would be the field that's eligible for those funds. And so if an emergency came up, whether it was in the community they serve, as was lifted up by the situation in Brooklyn, which is this primary example they gave, or if it was something specific to the internal functioning of that organization, a bill came up, there was something temporary that needed to be solved, that fund would simply, that application process would simply exist. It'd be a standing application process, and any organization that came into one of those circumstances would have the opportunity to apply for it. And so I think that capacity already exists within the bill as it's framed.
But I think that, and I appreciate that. So it sounds like what you're saying is that at the beginning of the year, when as they're putting in their funding plan together, that there would be a contingency fund, let's say, that could potentially address issues, emergent issues like this, and that the current grantees would be the one, or I would say current and historical, because sometimes that happens, could go to BCYF and say, look, our building just burned down and we need some additional funding just to be able to get us through the next. I mean, I'm just thinking of all the scenarios: building burning down, bridge funding for a gap reimbursement, staffing issue where they need to bring in temps. I mean, as a nonprofit executive director in the past, I'm just trying to think of all the different things that could possibly be those kinds of things that we need to make sure that there's some flexibility for, and that are in the public good interest, right? And so is there something else that we need to say? I mean, I wouldn't call it invite only. It would have to be something around a contingency fund or something like that.
Real quick question. There's a lot going on, but I want to make sure everybody gets a part of the conversation. I know Vice President Middleton is trying to get in the conversation for a second, please, and then we'll come back.
I think this is kind of important. And thank you, Councilwoman Ramos, for bringing up this emergency granting. One thing that stands out with me was when we had that Brooklyn mass shooting, which was terrible. And, they were able to be supported because of that. And that was a serious situation. I'm hoping that that's not going to stop, because we're going to have many serious situations that, as we're revitalizing and restructuring our city. How is that going to, that piece going to ensure that we can continue, that this organization can continue to do that? Yes, I'm sorry. He wanted to chime in, Councilman Torrance.
And this is where I'm struggling, because in COVID-19, City Schools was not a grantee. They gave money to do one-to-one, and the system has sustained it. And then I think about the fact that I just saw private philanthropy step in when government shut down all the Head Starts in Atlanta, and they provided them the bridge gap loans, and they did it, right? I think about just being transparent. If it's not written in there, it is not happening, and one of your grantees could sue us, right? And that is why we need to be explicit about it, because we've gone so detailed into the minutia. If it's not there, then it means it's not there, and then it's a court case, right? And I think that is where I'm struggling, is that we've gotten too prescriptive to the point where if an emergency happens, we don't have a way to respond to it. And I just want to say that I'm willing to work on language and curtailing what it looks like, but I think not to have it and not be responsive to what the feedback was, given the tension between not only you as a board member and the board, as well as the general community. From what I hear is tension.
And then let me pause, because I want to be recognizing folks. I want folks to start pressing buttons and everything. We'll recognize people on time.
But I just want to finish my comment. And I just say this because I think we can get to where we need to be, but I think, and I'm uncomfortable because I don't want to put an organization in the standpoint that they can't respond to what is the immediate need of our communities. And I say that as someone who has to leave to go do something now, but I say that wholeheartedly. I'm willing to work on a language around it, but as of right now, I'm a hard no.
That's right. Hold on, Mr. Vice Chair. So one of the things that came out at the end of our last meeting, and I know you and a couple others weren't able to be here, but one of the things that the sponsor and Vice Chair had mentioned was that, it said if there was an amendment to do such a thing, he would not be the person to introduce it. But if there's other folks that have that as an amendment, that's something else that could be discussed. Again, I'm not necessarily putting that forward. The Vice Chair didn't mention putting that forward, but again, that's to the committee's discretion to do so. Mr. Vice Chair.
Sure, absolutely. So I've listened really thoughtfully and carefully to the feedback from BCOF about especially emergency situations. I've already described the way that if I was in a leadership role there, that I think the law allows for emergency situations like we're describing to be handled within the laws it's written. And we had that explicit conversation with the law department as well. So I think it's there. I think that going farther and being more prescriptive would actually be working against what you're trying to accomplish there. And if I didn't think it was there, then I would be the one offering that amendment. But because I do, because I think that is actually addressed in this text, and I have confidence in that, I haven't pursued it further because I think that capacity is there. Yeah.
Do you have the dialogue?
Hey, people, let's wait till you recognize, because I want to keep
I
some order
apologize,
going on
Mr.
there.
Chair, I apologize.
Yeah. All right. You have a question? Go ahead. Sorry.
Do you have the language or acknowledgement from the law department that they also believe that it's in the bill that you could send us?
It was in conversation, so we had lengthy conversations with the law department. It's not something that's written down.
Could
but
we
I can
get that? Could we get that?
I'll make sure we have it for second reader.
Because I would like to make sure, well, I would like to see it earlier, because if I need to craft an amendment for second reader, then.
Sure. I'll make sure we have it as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Councilmember Torrance, please.
So I'm just being transparent. So we're asking for a vice counsel to be very clear that the emergency access is there. And I just want to make sure that if it is there, will you be willing to make it public so that for the legislative record, when someone sues us in court, if this thing does happen, because this has happened before with other city programs, we said it's there, and the bill was so prescriptive that now people are like, yeah, it's not there, and the judge be like, it's not explicitly there, because, I love my colleagues, but in the state of Maryland, a lot of our judges are originalists. It has to be explicit, and if it's silent, it does not exist unless it's the General Assembly, right? For us, it has to be explicit. And I want to make sure that we be clear that, like, when we make laws, we have to be explicit, because if there is gray area, a court will overturn it. That is why we had the BMZA issues that came back to us for how we did it, because it was explicit. So I just want to make sure that, like, when we make law, we make good law, and we're not sitting here and we're putting and jeopardizing the future funding of the program too.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Torrance, Councilman Torrance. Yes, I said it the last time we got together 2 weeks ago, and I said it today. So I've said everything I can say about my understanding of the flexibility that's created exactly for these circumstances. And so I'm glad to get that from law department in writing. Obviously, we had lots of conversations about it, but absolutely, for the record, twice now, my understanding is that the rules that currently exist have have room for emergency response.
Vice President Middleton.
So it sounds like we need for this. Seems to be a crucial piece to have all of us on the same page. If we can get something, all of us, something in writing on this piece that we seem to have a long conversation about. I'd like to propose. That, you know, it's up to us, the chair, if we want to take a vote, but I think it sounds like we need to be sure of this piece that seems to have come up. So what's the rush? If we want to see this stuff in writing, like we do with other amended things. So I'm asking the sponsor, are you willing to get this document in writing so all of us on the committee are in sync along with the organization?
It's a fair question.
So I'm glad to make sure that we pursue that ahead of our further consideration of the bill. But I'll be calling for a vote today on the bill here in committee, recognizing that this is, because it's not an outstanding question for me, I consider the matter settled in the current law that's before us, the current proposal. I understand other people may have questions about that, and do have questions about that, and I don't begrudge them that curiosity or that concern. But we spent a lot of time talking with everyone involved, including the law department, and I feel like the way it's written addresses that.
We all have to go, I think, but I was going to see if we could get somebody from the law department to come and talk to us.
Yeah, we did have Jeff Hostetler here at the last hearing, and we had some conversation around it. So, I mean, I'm looking at, the number of people here, and I'm not sure where folks stand in terms of that vote. I mean, you can push it forward, or you can hold
Mr. Chair, I just have one last question related to this. Do you want to point to some of the language in the bill that we could maybe point to say, oh yeah, it's in here? Or do you think it's implied?
Sure, no, exactly. So I think the language around grant opportunities being made available to all eligible organizations gives and we spoke about this specifically last time around, that all eligible organizations for a specific grant opportunity could very well be existing, or as you said, maybe past grantees, right? That would be the eligibility, that BCYF has the flexibility in designing a grant program to draw the boundaries of eligibility for a specific grant program, like middle school sports and the summer funding program, things like that, to meet the broader needs of the bill. And so rather than being so prescriptive, to simply say that the opportunities have to be available to all eligible organizations, then allows them to say, hey, whether it's emergency, whether it's contingency, whatever you want to say, crisis fund, we have a standing crisis fund, which is a standing emergency fund. Here's the application. The moment that something arises that's of urgent issue in your community or in your organization, you are eligible to apply for this because you are one of our current, past, whatever that boundary is that BCYF wants to describe. I don't want to prescribe that at all, but they have that capacity to do that. I think actually it helps BCYF be even more responsive, because instead of it being an ad hoc situation where something comes up and it's like, we don't have a process in place to receive this emergency application, this emergency request. We don't have a standing review process. This allows them to define, for now and in perpetuity, when there is an emergency situation, these are exactly the steps we follow. This is how we expedite the board approval process, because it still has to go to the board. This is who's going to be responsible for guiding them through the application process, making sure that it's the program officer is reviewing it right away. So I think it allows them to define that, standardize it, and have it be a standing part of their program instead of something that just comes up on occasion and it has to be created on the fly.
Let me take a pause here. I do want to hear from the Youth Fund on this, but let me just give you the lay of the land as I see it right now. It seems to me that if this goes to a vote right now, it's going to be 3-3. I'm not sure if that's necessarily what we want. The other part that I would say is that I am open to having the opportunity to have additional language on this, and for there also to be another amendment after the fact on second reader. So I mean, we could do it any kind of way you want.
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
but I do want to hear from Youth Fund directly.
I also want to hear from them as well. I think that, I do want to hear from the law department, but if this is the only piece, then I'm comfortable moving forward, but I want to at least have the next couple of days to work through it with the law department and the sponsor and BCYF and put something in if we needed that additional language.
Right. Youth Fund, please. Brandon.
Thanks, and thank you, Councilman, for your thoughts there. I would say at the last working session, I actually think it was me who said it, I still think it is a little gray, and I think I actually asked for clarification from the law department on that. I don't think we ever came to a resolution. And that's not to put Jeff on blast. I just think it just hasn't occurred. So I think from our standpoint in speaking for community, it's something that is very important. So that would be my 2 cents there.
Mr. Chair, I'll take initiative to work this through for the committee if that's something that you're amenable to and the sponsor's amenable to.
Yeah, I certainly want to be part of those conversations, right? So I'd say this. So as I understand it, I'm confident that the scenario we've described is covered in the current law, and it's precisely left at their discretion so as not to be so prescriptive, which I share Councilperson Torrance's concerns. My certainly commitment is if the law department expresses formally, officially, skepticism around this, no offense, Brandon, but we want to hear from the law department, then I will absolutely be part of putting that into the amendment, into a final amendment at second reader.
Okay, so then just to reiterate, so to make sure everybody's clear. So at this point, we could be fine with moving the amendment that's in front of us, moving the bill as amended, and then looking for additional language from the law department that clarify the invitation only piece, and then if need be, and then put that into an amendment language, if need be.
Sure, I would simply say it's not about invitation only, it's about making sure that emergency situations can be covered by a standing process that's not by invitation, yeah.
Right. Like I said. Anyway, this is something else. It's the same thing. So I'm not going to.
Yeah, and just being transparent, the goal, it's still gray because City Schools was not a grantee, right? It was technically a quasi-government agency that happened. Give you an example, imagine if we lost Head Start funding in the city of Baltimore and those 5 providers needed assistance to continue the program, knowing that the funds will come, and they wanted to provide a bridge. How do they apply if they've never been a grantee? And that's why I say we have to have very clear verbiage, because if that happens and I'm a grantee and I got denied for that and this person got it and they're a part of this thing, I can challenge that in court. And I just want to make sure that this is not a standard nonprofit. This is a government dollar. So we have to be very content neutral. We have to be very explicit in how we say it. And that's why we ran into the trouble with BMZA, and people don't trust BMZA because they went from allowing this one thing, and then the court said, bad, y'all, it's not explicit in your law, do it over. And we still haven't fixed it. And every decision after that was in jeopardy. And I think we need to have this, and I'm sorry to say this, but the majority of this bill, even as amended, is still prescriptive. Even with taking out some of the grant processes, it's still prescriptive. I think we need to really have that solidification from law, and then we waive our attorney-client privilege to say that this is the advice that we received, so it's in a legislative record, that this is possible. But otherwise than that, I'm not comfortable with it and I'm just being transparent, because if they're not comfortable with it and they're an organization that is doing the work, and I had to say this, if the person who's doing the work is uncomfortable and doesn't know if they have that explicitly, then that makes it a hard area for them to actually implement.
Let me just say this really quickly, because there's a lot going on even behind me, and again, there's some language that's coming out. Again, I know people want to actually see the language. I know that we can verbalize. I know folks want to see it, but Mr. Vice Chair. Councilmember Ramos, wild in here, y'all about to find out. I won't give it.
I just want to remind the committee the rules here, that if it is a tie, it fails, okay? And so that's all I'm saying, is that, that doesn't mean that we can't bring it back up, and that's the discretion of the chair to bring it back up. But just being conscious of what the vote count might be, and if you want to recess a couple minutes just to figure that out, I mean, I will say that I understand that my colleagues' hesitations, and I have said, and I will continue to say that I'm happy to work with the sponsor to fix this issue in the next few days before second reader.
Brandon, you want to?
I just wanted to say just one thing around emergency funding only going to a current grantee. I don't have any. I can't look it up specifically. I don't think that the President Lee would really want that necessarily to be a thing, or our community. We were, I don't want to say fortunate, that's not the right word, but when the shooting did occur in South Baltimore, we did have a grantee that was able to go to South Baltimore and do that work. So that was a lot easier. God forbid something were to happen in another neighborhood where BCOF didn't have a grantee, but there was someone there doing that work. I just wouldn't want that to be something that was specifically closed off. Who knows? I'm just saying that out loud because I'm thinking of community. So I just wanted to just put that in too.
Right, and I'll just say at this point, and I want to be very clear, I'm ecumenical as it comes to this. I'm deeply ambivalent, right? Whether we vote on it now or whether we do something else. Again, just looking at the tenor and the temperature in the room, it seems if it goes to a vote right now, it's going to be 3-3. Now, we can choose to do that, and I will say, I'm also fine with moving the bill as amended and then having an additional amendment on second reader. I'm open, but I don't want folks to fall on their sword today. So again, I'll leave it to Vice Chair.
I appreciate that. I think it's helpful to note for the purpose of this conversation that the distinction between emergency or contingency funds that is often the example lifted up and invitation only breaks down like this. So in 2023, 15% of grants were invite only of the total grant funds that went out. In 2024, it was 17% were invite only. In 2025, it was 48%. were invite only. So almost half of the money that was put out by BCOF and grants was invitation only, which was not an emergency situation, wasn't contingent. I mean, I feel for the emergency, I feel for the contingency, absolutely. But the bigger question of invite only versus making sure there's room for genuine emergencies and responsiveness, I think those are two different things when it comes to the amount of money that's flowing out that's not going through a full public process.
I'm gonna give some advice in a minute, but I want to hear what Councilman Torrance has said, and I think I may have a potential solution, but go ahead.
I'm just gonna let you know, the people who got those funds, YouthWorks, city schools, these are things that came up question with those invites. Those were part of those invites, if my understanding of the data, right? So I just wanna be clear, like, we gotta have a real reckoning about, like, the data says this, but the reality was this, right? And for me, in just being transparent, they just started the multi-year funding cycle, which we asked them to a long time ago, which they've been compliant with, which means that they have funding already dedicated to it. Then there was an invitation for things that we were missing in their ecosystem. A lot of that was filling in the gap for some programming, filling in the gap for city schools in terms of youth sports. And I'm just being transparent to the administration and everybody else. I firmly believe city schools should not have received any funding for youth sports because they had the money, they've had the budget, they've always overspent for it, they had the ability to do it. They've received $700 million in ARPA dollars from the federal government to do it themselves. So I think that, like, we had to have that conversation. I raised that voice, but it was only because the CEO came in here and just made people feel happy about it, because that plan that they did for youth sports sat on a desk for 6 years. That was not approved by her chief of staff. So I just want to make sure that, like, if we want to talk about the ideals and the optics of it all, I think that I need to figure out a way to help them do this right, because what happens if we have another pandemic, or if we lose funding for our Head Start organizations and they're not guarantees, we can fill in the gap like other pirate philanthropy has done in other places.
Sure. So this is helpful in terms of the conversation. I would just say, and it seems like everybody wants to press a button now and start, talk without being recognized, but I'm just going to say this, right? So, and I'm definitely going to recognize folks, but again, it's getting late in the day. But what I would say to you is this, right? It seems like there's some unease in the room as it relates to the bill, right? And I think it would do us a good service to actually get some clarified language. Again, I don't want to rush this, and to the sponsor, I don't want a good bill to die because we're not having this conversation. So just take that for what it's worth. Councilmember Jones, please.
No, I was just going to kind of repeat what you just said, Chair. I would prefer to get clarification before voting on certain things. I get it in second reader. We can also address some of these matters, but the ability to cast a vote, I would prefer before casting something yes or no to get clarification, because it's starting to get a little murky on what is and what isn't. And I hate that the fact that just kind of brought up now pertaining to this one issue and we don't have clarification for it. So that's the only thing.
Let's say this now. I want to go directly to the sponsor after this. What would be very helpful is clearly articulated language from the law department speaking specifically to this issue, an alignment and an agreement between MOGR, BCYF, the sponsor, the committee, understanding where things are so there are no more questions and we can put this thing to bed. How does that sound?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. I've just been informed that Jeff is on his way here, so hopefully we'll hear from the law department in a second. Recognizing it's already late in the day and that we have another hearing here after a little while. So I very much agree with Councilperson Torrance's critiques of kind of non-grantee funds that have flown out of BCOF. It's one of the reasons why this bill is written the way it is, because it forces everyone, government agency or not, to apply for a grant, right? In the mayor's office, we've talked to the mayor's office understands that this is their process moving forward. If there's a public program, and the charter allows for public programs to receive funding so long as it's not replacing general fund dollars that were spent in 2017, blah, blah, blah. The charter allows for it, but if it's gonna happen, it's not gonna be outside of, here's a grant opportunity, we apply for it alongside other organizations, and the community review process, the staff review process said, this application has merit for these reasons, right? So there's no sideway pass for those funds to be there. I would say, just in terms of statistics I shared, that was the regular grant making. It didn't include the additional extra non-formal, informal processes that you referred to, because that so skews the data and isn't in order from my perspective. So.
Yes, please.
I just want to say before I say this, I'm looking at some numbers right now. I don't have the time to dig into them specifically, but I do want to just offer some context. The President's Fund, specifically in fiscal year 25, which is an invitation-only fund, it has, just basic math right here, it's about 7% of our annual grant-making budget. The other amount, which this is the number that I don't feel confident in, but I'll just share the context, would probably be from the Aligned Grant-Making Fund. That is money that we have in the past put towards the Summer Funding Collaborative. So it's I just want to make that context there.
Thank you very much, Brandon. I appreciate it.
Anyone else? I've heard that Jeff Hostler is descending from on high. I mean, what's going on here?
I just want to say the statistics that you've shared is just so important. And we're only asking for a little bit more time to get something in writing. And I feel that it's important. I kind of gave my speech when the update was given earlier today with the previous bill. And just us being involved this way is it's hard. And I don't want us to be involved this way ever again. And I think we need to have that time in writing to make sure that if this is the final piece, we should have that collaboration with this group so we can continue to have our partnership and trust, and they can report out, moving forward. And if this is the one piece that's needed, I think it should be granted to get that clarification and in writing, as we do with everything else in writing.
Definitely understand and appreciate the request to see it in writing. Before we see it in writing, we do have Jeff Hostler here from the law department. So again, if you want to opine on this issue, or if you need a refresher on what we're discussing, please let us know too.
Sure, thanks, Chair. Could you refresh me on the question that's being asked?
Invitation-only grants, emergency funds, whether that's acceptable by law, if there's some kind of challenge. We talked about this in terms of the private sector having invitation-only versus the city being able to do it, or the youth fund being able to have invitation-only, particularly in cases where there's an emergency that needs to be addressed by a specific subject matter expert, XYZ, those kinds of things.
As I understand the current amendments that are on your desk, there are sort of two possible paths outlined for grants. One would be with community panel, and one would be with sort of a staff panel of the Children and Youth Fund, which a grant opportunity would qualify for that if it's time sensitive and requires expedited review and recommendations, among some other criteria. Specialized or strategic, also limited in scope, or including technical assistance or targeted initiative. So I think the language about a grant opportunity being time sensitive and requires expedited review would cover an emergency situation.
Members of the committee may have questions, or the sponsor may have questions or clarification. Here's your chance to speak.
So, Jeff, I have questions. So, in Atlanta, the Head Start shut down and philanthropy provided funding for the bridge. Would they be eligible, our Head Start providers who are not current or past grantees, to apply directly to Youth Fund and get that funding right away? And I'm giving an example where philanthropy turned around and provided this funding within 72 hours.
I mean, I can't speak to the internal processes of the fund, but I don't see anything in the legal criteria here that would prevent that.
And so just to clarify, I know I spent a lot of time talking about emergency funds that would be restricted to current or past grantees, but that's simply my suggestion to BCOF about how they might approach it, but it's specifically not saying it would have to be that. So your example of Head Start or some other, that would be
That would be up to BCOF to say if that's how they wanted to design their emergency funds or not.
Go ahead.
Yes, because I would also say, and I think President Lee spoke about this last time, some things are not necessarily emergency, and she kind of raised this up earlier today too, such as like the insurance. That's not necessarily an emergency, maybe I guess for some, yes, but that's not necessarily an emergency like we would say the Brooklyn shooting was. That's just like a gap that needs to be filled that some grantees really don't have the monetary ability to do. So then those, that type of opportunity, we have found a way now to make that an opportunity that is available. But in the past, that was something that was, again, invitation only because it was necessary. Grantees really couldn't sustain the compliance that the city requires. So I just want to add that, other outlook on it as well.
And then for the other members that are here, I know there's desire for written opinion. Did you have something you want to say, Torrance?
Yeah, Jeff, I'm still not comfortable. I will want some type of language around it because, God forbid, we've gotten here before with like BMZA stuff that we weren't explicit about, and this bill is very prescriptive to me. I think we need language. I don't feel comfortable voting yes today because if they don't feel like they have the opportunity to, and then I'm always mindful that the legislative record is not always complete. I think while your intent is there, no one's gonna call you in a court from us and say that your intent was there and that their intent was there. It's the difference between who's implementing and who's drafting it. And I don't feel comfortable because we're prescriptive everywhere else, but not here. Especially if private philanthropy does invitation only. I think that we need to give them that ability. Just being transparent. I don't know how that affects other colleagues to vote, but I am a person who wholeheartedly think that we started on a mission to do right by Black and brown people, and I think that we need to, the people who are most closest to the work provide the best solutions, and they're saying that this doesn't provide them a solution.
So let's say this, and I deeply appreciate, the work on this bill by the sponsor, obviously a co-sponsor as well, and also I appreciate the commentary and the questions and the insight from the members of the committee. I do also recognize the hesitancy at this point to vote. One of the positive pieces of this piece is that we're not under a time constraint. So I think it would be prudent to hold this over so we can get this together, to get this in a place where there's no more heartburn. But I think this needs to be, like I said, we need to get to a finish line. And I think we're close to there, but I would rather us not be in this position where we're not fighting back and forth, but having this lack of clarity. So again, what I would suggest, again, if we can have that in a written form, to your point, Councilman Torrance, right, seeing what the language is, I think we've heard today, but then if there's a need for any potential amendments or what have you, additional language, I also want to get that worked out so we don't find ourselves in this position again and not have to keep amending the bill and touching different parts of it. Is that agreeable? Sure. Thank you. And I will just say, I understand, look, this is a very important bill, and I would just say this, and this is to the sponsor and vice chair's credit. At the beginning of this hearing today, there was discussion around some of the misinformation around what these funds do and who it's aimed at. And what I understand is that this bill is coming from a good place. We want to make sure that we are, dotting all our I's, crossing all our T's, and that we're not having any unintended consequences of what we do in this chamber. So again, I appreciate the thought, the pushback, and all things we've gotten here. So with this, we will recess. And we will then announce a voting session very, very soon to get us to the finish line, okay? With that, we'll stand in recess. Thank you very much.